Catherine sweated through her sheets, clutching her head in pure agony. She was trapped inside another nightmare. The masked man in black. In front of everyone, Catherine spun around, slapping Lucas's hand away from her waist. She frowned, scolding him in a low voice, reminding him he shouldn't act fresh in public, but Lucas didn't back down, a smile touching his lips. "I'm just happy you finally care about me, Catherine." The woman wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, while Lucas was still asleep, Catherine walked into his room with a dark face. The television was broadcasting a live press conference. Iris was standing in front of the cameras, announcing that Lucas had proposed to her last night. The news left Catherine feeling betrayed and angry. The second Lucas woke up, he ran to Catherine's bed, grabbing her hand to explain the situation. "The news is completely fake, I swear," he pleaded. To clear his name, Lucas called his own press conference. Standing tall under the flashing media lights, he spoke into the microphone. "Won't marry Iris, your brother will," the old man roared. But the old man never expected his second son to stand up too, announcing he was giving up his inheritance as well. The younger brother held Maya's hand firmly, telling his father they had already married overseas. "Nobody is breaking us apart," the brother declared. The sudden twists left the father clutching his chest, speechless. Catherine, Maya, and the brother smiled at each other. "So you guys were just buying time for us to register," Maya laughed. Catherine looked at Lucas, a beautiful smile on her face. "Now, nobody can stop us from being together," she whispered. The two couples held their lovers' hands tightly, walking out of the hall under the flashing cameras, leaving the old man screaming in total despair behind them. Right in front of their faces, she ripped the papers into shreds. "I am the CEO of this company now," she declared. "Investing a single dime in this trash is a waste." She slammed the shredded paper on the desk, told them to get the hell out. Later, when the room cleared out, Catherine asked Lucas about a $2 billion project. Lucas looked dead serious and voted no. Turns out, according to the will from a month ago, Catherine inherited the entire empire, but any expense over $1 million required Lucas's personal approval. On the surface, Lucas was just the legal counsel, but his real identity was the Grand General of the Great Zhou dynasty, and the woman standing before him was the Empress Dowager who had traveled through time. Having just learned that her empire fell ages ago, the Empress spent the night in her luxury villa, using an iPad to binge and watch modern dramas. Looking at a Qing dynasty queen on screen, she asked her maid with total confusion, "Who on earth is that?" The maid laughed, trying not to cry, and said, "Ma'am, that is just an actress named Ada." The Empress was completely losing her mind. Lucas told her the old empire was dead, so why was a queen doing reality TV shows now? The maid thought her boss was losing it from grief, so she wiped her tears and kept explaining that it was just a television show. The Empress watched the dramatic death scene on screen. Muttering the word actress to herself, she finally woke up to reality. She had traveled through time. Suddenly, a flood of memories hit her. Back in the breathed heavily, clutching her neck in fear. The bloody revenge of her past life clashed wildly with her modern memories. Just then, the bedroom door flew open. Lucas rushed in, looking panicked and soaked in water. Catherine, sitting in her red silk pajamas, startled. Ignoring the awkwardness, Lucas handed her his phone. A major corporate secret had just leaked. But as a Time Zan traveling empress, she had survived much worse storms than this. She calmly analyzed the situation, used the weekend time gap to find a loophole, and took full control of the crisis right there. Looking at the general who always shielded her, Catherine felt a wave of warmth in her heart. Lucas promised to stand by her side and fight this battle together to the end. With the crisis his file and stood up with a smile. "Ma'am, it is time for the luxury auction. Let's go." Catherine grabbed her bag with total elegance. As she passed by the terrified Zach, she playfully patted his shoulder. "Good job last night. Here is a little tip." Catherine and Lucas walked out side by side, leaving a chaotic, empty office behind them. Maya had rushed back in, tearing into Zach, screaming and punching him in pure rage. "Was that you last night, you lying piece of trash?" The Hides and Stakes corporate war ended perfectly, with the villains turning on each other and the powerful matriarch taking a total victory. The woman was completely wasted on the couch, slurring her words and screaming she was the Empress. She kept saying she regretted giving birth to him, crying about betrayals from a past life. She looked right at Lucas, calling him the general, vowing to bring him down to his knees this time. The bizarre ranting left Lucas completely confused, standing there without a single clue. The scene shifted to the tense auction room. Catherine stared at Lucas with a cold look. "Why are you bidding against me for this bracelet?" Lucas replied smoothly, without missing a beat, that it was a family heirloom passed down for a millennium. He examined the antique piece closely, asked if her ancestors were northern nomads. Catherine didn't feel like playing games. "Name your price and sell it to me," she demanded. Lucas played along and made a counteroffer. "I'll give it to you if you do one thing for me." Though she hesitated, she nodded just to get it back. Holding the bracelet, Catherine secretly celebrated, while Lucas watched her with growing suspicion. On the floor, he stammered that it was a gift from his grandpa, and since he thought it was cheap junk, he sold it at a flea market for $20. Hearing this, Catherine almost lost her mind. She slammed her hand on the desk, furious. "An ancient artifact I wouldn't even give a princess, and you sold it as trash for $20. You are an absolute waste of space." What made her even more furious was seeing Zach hooking up with Maya on the street, parading around like a happy couple. Catherine stared at them, gritting her teeth, swearing she would make him pay for everything. She even scolded Lucas for not working hard enough to seduce Maya away from him. That night, feeling completely miserable, she drank too much. Leaning on Lucas's shoulder, she let the truth slip. "Zach isn't just some regular guy," she murmured. "He was the emperor in the past life, a traitorous son, and I was the Empress Dowager who ruled them all." Lucas gently carried the drunk woman to the sofa. Looking at her sleeping face, he whispered, "Catherine, what kind of secrets are you hiding?" He gently took her small hand in his. Just then, Catherine muttered something in her sleep. "If we weren't born in rival nations back then, maybe we could have been soulmates." Lucas stared at her with deep affection, whispering back. But Zach's sweet talk had Maya floating on clouds. But they had no idea that Catherine and Lucas were parked outside, watching everything clearly. As the happy couple walked out of the venue, Catherine rolled down the car window, mocking Zach right to his face until he froze. Seeing his smug face instantly crumble brought pure joy to Catherine's heart. After the drama, they sat chatting in the car. Catherine felt a bit down, telling Lucas not to blame himself for the restaurant incident. Outside the window, Zach and Maya were screaming at each other, turning the street into a massive public fight. Watching their relationship crumble from within, Catherine let out a dark, satisfied laugh. Late at night, the streetlights were dim. Zach and his sketchy crew were plotting their next move. His thug asked how they should handle the gig, asking if they should just go ahead and rob her. Every single word was caught by Catherine and Lucas, who were hiding right behind the bushes. Zach spat on the ground with a vicious look. "The woman is already suspicious of me," he growled. "I'm going to rob her blind before I skip town." Catherine's face turned incredibly dark. On the ride home, looking at her upset face, Lucas finally couldn't hold back his feelings. "Everything I do has nothing to do with others," he said softly, staring into her eyes. "I do it all entirely for you." Catherine froze, looking down at her red bracelet as her heart skipped a massive beat. "Hell are you really?" Maya learned the hard way today that a fallen princess gets treated worse than garbage. Catherine leaned back on the designer sofa, dropping the most brutal news in a calm voice. "You don't have a single asset left under your name." Lucas tried to calm the girl down nicely, but Maya wasn't hearing any of it. She pointed her finger right at their faces, screaming, "You two are sleeping together. I know it." Right in the middle of her crazy tantrum, her phone started ringing like crazy. On the video call, a kidnapper in a monkey mask was waving a massive, terrifying machete, stepping right on a bloody, beaten Zach. The thug barked that if he didn't get $5 million cash, he would send the boy home in a body bag. Seeing her man on the brink of death, Maya lost her mind with fear, promising not to call cops. But she was completely broke now. She cornered Catherine like a psycho, demanding she give up her inheritance to save him, facing the most click-shoe kidnapping scam ever. The experienced Catherine didn't even blink. "I'm not paying," she said coldly. "Call the cops." Hearing the word cops, Zach shrieked in terror, screaming through the phone not to involve the police. Seeing Catherine refuse to budge, Maya snapped, yelling, "He's practically your son Zan in Zan law." Catherine waved her hands in pure disgust. "I could never give birth to a piece of trash like that." Desperate to save her man, Maya went feral. "Fine, I'll find the money somewhere else. I'll sell my house." She stormed out of the room like a tornado. Catherine and Lucas looked at each other and smiled, completely amused by the ultimate textbook definition of a simp. Honestly, Catherine saw through the scam from day one. Flashback to earlier, Catherine had mocked Maya for not even being able to keep her own dog on a leash. That ridiculous kidnapping video looked like a cheap joke. To save her boyfriend, Maya actually threw her deeds down. Catherine played along with the game smoothly, offering to buy her 3 luxury properties at half price. Desperate for the $5 million, Maya signed instantly, but the second the wire transfer went through, the greedy kidnapper demanded another $3 million. Zach was crying like a baby on the screen. Lucas calmly suggested calling the police again. Predictably, the thug lost his mind over the phone, threatening to kill the hostage right then and there. While everyone held their breath in pure terror, Catherine snatched the phone away with total disdain. She stared into the camera and dropped 5 words. "Go ahead and kill him." She slammed the phone shut, turned around, and walked upstairs elegantly in her high heels, leaving Maya crying on the floor in total despair. Now, you might think this stepmom is pure evil, but this is where the plot takes a massive twist. Late at night, Lucas watched Catherine walk away, sighing that Maya brought this entirely on herself. But Catherine finally dropped her cold mask, letting out a sigh. She knew Maya wasn't a bad kid at heart. She was just blinded and manipulated by a toxic man. The only reason she took all her properties today was because she knew if Maya kept those assets, Zach would steal every single cent from her anyway. Instead of letting a predator ruin the girl, she played the villain to lock the wealth away. Once the girl finally hits rock bottom and grows up, she plans to return the entire estate untouched. To completely trap the scammer, Catherine forced Zach to sign a strict legal contract. If he didn't pay back the $5 million within a year, the interest would compound heavily. It was a secret shield to protect Maya's life. Zach signed it with a guilty, shaking hand. But Maya, trapped in her tragic romance drama, refused to appreciate any of it. She raised her chin proudly and barked at Catherine, "I don't want a single dime from this family ever again. Zach and I will work regular jobs and build our own life." Catherine just stood there, laughing and clapping. "Good luck with your beautiful romance," she teased. "Hope you guys strike it rich real soon." So, what was the beloved prince doing at that exact moment? Cut to a high-end luxury nightclub later that night. The neon lights were blinding, pounding to the beat. The guy who was supposedly dying in the video was popping expensive bottles on a leather couch, with half-Zan naked girls wrapped all around him. A hostess laughed, asking if he really got kidnapped. Zach pointed to a tiny scratch on his face, bragging that the entire thing was a show he directed himself. "She's absolutely nothing to me," he spat. The whole kidnapping plot was just a scam designed by a toxic predator to bleed Maya dry. Suddenly, Frank, the vice president of the firm, appeared, giving Zach a dark warning glare. "Good job on the scam, but keep a low profile," he said. There was a much bigger monster pulling the strings. Meanwhile, Maya was wearing a cheap uniform, working a brutal shift outside a freezing cafe, so exhausted she could barely stand up straight. From a luxury car parked across the street, Catherine and Lucas watched the scene in silence. Lucas felt terrible, asking why she chose such a brutal way to test the poor girl. Catherine took a slow sip of her hot tea. "She needs to learn the hard way," she said softly. "The right person will comfort her when the time comes." To keep her stepdaughter from completely drowning, the tough, Zan-loving matriarch made another secret move. Late at night, as Maya was doing her makeup in her room, Catherine kicked the door open using her usual mean tone. "Tired of playing around all day," she mocked. "Lucas's law firm needs a receptionist you in." Hearing about a real job, Maya's eyes lit up. She didn't even finish putting on her lipstick. "I'm in," she yelled, throwing her hand up. Seeing her stepdaughter finally ready to do real work, Catherine smiled softly and turned around to leave. "Report at Shumwabadian tomorrow," she said. At the end of the hallway, Lucas was leaning on the wall, watching Catherine walk away with pure love in his eyes. "You always have a soft heart in the end," he murmured. Facing massive corporate traps and dangerous enemies, can this fierce protective matriarch and her general completely crush the villains in this modern corporate war? Stay tuned for the next episode, exposing a toxic man. The billionaire CEO shows you how to completely destroy a predator. Inside the corporate headquarters, the heiress Maya was fighting over a designer bag with a girl in a green dress, screaming and begging her to let go of the strap. Right as the lobby turned into total chaos, the powerful female CEO Catherine arrived with Lucas. The drama settled. Catherine walked over, looking completely worried about Lucas. She gently checked his neck and adjusted his jacket, whispering softly, "Are you hurt?" Lucas caught her wrist gently, flashing a warm smile. "I'm perfectly fine," he replied, watching the two share such an intimate moment in public. Maya and the side chick looked completely disgusted. But the CEO wasn't there for romance. Business first. They all sat down inside the executive office. Catherine leaned back in her chair, dropping a cold command. "Call Zach right now," she told the girl in green. "Tell him the bag he gave you is a fake." The girl panicked, trying to act tough, asking why she should. But under Catherine's deadly, killer stare, she folded instantly and pulled out her phone. She put the call on speakerphone for everyone to hear. "Hey babe, this bag you got me is fake, right?" she whined. Zach panicked over the line, screaming defensively, swearing on his life it was a real piece from the boutique. The girl let out a cold laugh, dropping the bomb. "Then why did you give me your girlfriend's bag?" Zach immediately showed his true disgusting colors. "She has a million bags anyway," he complained. "Giving you one isn't a big deal. Why do you care?" Hearing her man give her own belongings to his mistress, Maya was furious, her blood boiling. She slammed her hands on the desk and stood up screaming, "You absolute piece of trash, Zach." Zach gasped over the phone, asking what that noise was. Under Catherine's warning glare, Maya had to swallow her rage, sitting back down tightly, muttering, "It is nothing." Lucas quickly scribbled a note. "Where is he?" The girl in green followed the script smoothly. "Where are you right now, babe?" she asked cutely. Zach, still floating on clouds, started bragging about closing a massive deal today. "I'm taking you to a movie, then a hotel room," he whispered. "I already booked a suite at the luxury Maple Hotel." The girl held back her disgust and agreed to meet him there. Zach kept talking dirty over the line. "After the movie, we can play some wild games," he laughed. Hearing her boyfriend say that to another woman made Maya shake violently in her chair, turning pale. Her nails dug deep into her own palms. The second the call ended, she closed her eyes in pure despair, feeling like her entire world had just collapsed. Honestly, Maya had always been pathetic in this relationship. She was completely brainwashed and manipulated by him. Even when she knew something was wrong with his gifts, she would just cry and apologize to him. "I'm sorry, Zach, let's not return it. I love the color," she'd say. Zach always acted like he was king. On a pitch-black night, out in the middle of nowhere, Hector snapped like a wild beast and choked his own daughter. Chloe gasped for air, barely forcing out a weak cry for her dad. But her own father looked completely demonic, tightening his grip. He screamed hysterically that she was a traitor, and swore that if he went down, she was going down with him. Hearing the distant police sirens, Hector's eyes filled with pure madness. He cursed her, knowing the cops were only here because of his own daughter. With a brutal shove, he threw Chloe to the ground and fled into the dark. Chloe collapsed in the dirt, clutching her neck and screaming for help, screaming that Hector was right there. Police cruisers tore through the night, their cold lights flashing. Hiding in the shadows, Hector watched them pass, grinding his teeth in rage. He glared in the direction Chloe went and let out a low, venomous growl. He warned her that she would pay for this. Having barely survived, Chloe stumbled back to the restroom, completely numb. She stared into the mirror at the horrific red marks on her neck. The tears finally spilled over. She utterly despised that family, and she despised Austin, the man who once swore he loved her more than life itself. Just as the despair began to drown her, her phone buzzed buzzed frantically. Snyder's name was flashing on the screen. Chloe took a deep breath, picked up and spoke in a cold, hollow voice. Fate wasn't done breaking Chloe just yet. At the wedding gala shortly after, before Chloe could even react, Haley marched up to her in towering high heels, looking furious. She pointed right at Chloe's face, screaming like a lunatic. She cursed Chloe for breaking her word and told her to drop dead. Before the words even faded, Haley slapped Chloe with all her might. The sharp crack echoed as the force knocked Chloe flat onto the floor. Her gorgeous wedding gown was instantly covered in dust. Haley stood over her, clamping her hand hard around Chloe's jaw. Her eyes were filled with pure malice and spite. She mocked Chloe, saying she was just as detestable as her father. She casually mentioned that Hector was currently trapped by the cops. Then, Haley began choking Chloe with absolute madness. Watching Chloe suffocate in agony, Haley smiled coldly. She told Chloe she better stay alive because her nightmare was just beginning. With a smug clap of her hands, she turned and walked away. Just as Haley was storming out, Austin intercepted her at the door. His face was pale with rage as he demanded to know what she was doing. Haley turned back, looking at Austin like he was a complete fool. She laughed and exposed the entire truth. She mocked him for letting himself be used for her revenge yet again. She proudly stated she would always do whatever it takes to get her way. Hearing this, Chloe crawled over on the floor, weeping and shattering. She grabbed at the edge of Austin's jacket, begging him to let her explain. But Austin was consumed by the stinging rage of betrayal. He coldly ripped his jacket from her grip and stormed out of the room, leaving Chloe all alone, crying out in total devastation. In reality, an even deeper conspiracy was at play. Back in the restroom earlier, Chloe had been arguing with a man on the phone. Rumors about her and Snyder were already tearing through Manhattan. The scandal had caused her father, Hector, to completely blow up at her. Chloe hissed into the receiver that the other woman was the one who deserved to pay. On the other end of the line, Austin listened silently with a cruel smirk. The second he hung up, Austin gave his assistant a lethal order. He ordered him to find out exactly who tried to run Chloe over the night before. Meanwhile, inside a hidden bedroom, a man in a plaid shirt was screaming into his phone in a total rage. He couldn't believe they failed to eliminate someone despite all the money he paid. Amber sat beside him in a black slip dress, her eyes dark and calculating. She calmly noted that since the hit failed, Chloe would be heavily guarded. Getting another shot at her would be damn near impossible. The man turned around, a dangerous glint flashing in his eyes. He pulled Haley into his arms and gently stroked the burn scars on her back. He hissed in her ear, promising that if Bryce wanted someone dead, there wasn't a soul in this city who could survive it. Over at the hospital, Bryce slammed the door open and rushed to the bed. Seeing Chloe in hospital scrubs, his voice trembled with intense worry. He frantically asked her if she was hurt anywhere. Chloe shook her head weakly, leaning back against the pillows, but her eyes were as sharp and cold as ice. She told Bryce that this crash was definitely Haley's doing. Bryce balled his fists in anger, promising to hire top-tier bodyguards immediately. He swore she would have 24-hour elite protection. Chloe looked at the man who would literally do anything for her. She placed a hand over her flat stomach and spoke in a complex tone. She quietly admitted that she wanted to keep the baby. Hearing that she wanted to keep a baby of unknown origin, Bryce was stunned, but his profound love for her overrode everything. He squeezed her hand tightly, making a solemn, heartfelt vow. He promised to raise the child with her and love it as his very own. Yet, facing such a deeply emotional confession, Chloe felt absolutely nothing. She coldly pulled her hand away from his warm grip. She turned her face away, her voice incredibly distant. She told him her mind was entirely set on revenge, with no room for romance. Bryce's hand froze in midair, a heavy shadow of disappointment falling over him. He lowered his head, adjusted his glasses, and quietly apologized for stepping out of line. But out of the ashes, new life began. A few days later, the old family empire was completely dead and buried. In its place rose the all-powerful Chloe Fashion Group, with Chloe at the helm, dressed in a sharp khaki blazer dress and tall boots. She walked into the boardroom like a ruling queen under the gaze of her staff. Sam, the financial director, ran up behind her, bowing and scraping. He nervously introduced himself and said she could grill him on the finances anytime. Chloe took her seat at the head of the table, flipping through the files. She calmly but intensely began questioning him. She asked if the massive penalties from the supply chain disaster were paid off. She demanded to know the exact financial health of the company right now. Sam wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, reporting that the debts were cleared, but due to the massive hit to their reputation, they only had enough cash flow to survive for 3 months. Worse yet, almost every Every supplier in the city was refusing to work with them. Facing total ruin from both inside and out, Chloe didn't even flinch. She tapped her long fingers on the desk and coldly asked about the returned inventory. Sam replied that the defective goods were just sitting in the warehouse. He mentioned the old boss wanted to liquidate them for cheap to get some cash. Before he could finish, Chloe snapped the folder shut with absolute authority. She flatly ordered him to cancel the sale. She commanded that all the stock be donated to charitable organizations immediately. Furthermore, she announced a 10% raise for anyone who stayed to fight. As for those who wanted to quit, she told him to let them walk. She ordered a full staff meeting to start in exactly 1 hour. Sam was completely awestruck by her fierce decisiveness, nodding in pure respect. In truth, back in that hospital room earlier, Chloe and Austin had already had a vicious confrontation. Austin had sat by her bedside, mocking her for how she treated her savior, but Chloe didn't back down for a second, snapping right back at him. She told him that bringing down the old empire avenged his family too, so they were officially even. The second Austin left with a darkened face, Chloe wasted no time. She dialed Bryce's number immediately, her voice urgent. She ordered him to find out exactly who tried to take her life. My, how the tables had turned. A few days later, inside a high-end executive office, Chloe sat elegantly on the couch in a beige trench coat, legs crossed. Austin sat across from her in a gray suit, pushing a massive contract forward. Chloe raised an eyebrow, a mocking smile playing on her lips. She taunted him, asking why he was suddenly being so generous, and wondered if he was still carrying a torch for her. Austin stared back with a completely blank expression, crushing her words. He told her it was strictly business, evaluating her remaining market value. He coldly noted that nobody walks away from a good payday. Chloe scoffed, leaning back with her arms crossed. She demanded to know why he was so sure she would accept his money. Austin leaned forward, ripping away her arrogant facade. He pointed out that her company was practically bankrupt, leaving her no choice. He assured her the terms held no hidden traps. Chloe fell silent for a moment, then signed the paperwork for the sake of the business. She elegantly extended her right hand with a fake smile, wishing him a good partnership. The moment the ink dried, Chloe wanted nothing to do with him. She coldly ordered him to get out of her office. Austin stood up, clearly offended by her icy treatment. He snapped that he'd just invested $100 million and expected a little more respect from his partner. Chloe stood up, throwing his own past cruel words right back in his face. Austin was left completely speechless and walked away in shame. But despite her absolute dominance in the business world, the betrayals and trauma still haunted Chloe whenever the night grew quiet. She would frequently wake up drenched in sweat, screaming in terror. And her ultimate nightmare finally caught up to her late one night. As she walked down a deserted street all alone, Hector emerged from the darkness like a demon straight out of hell. He lunged at her with a heavy rope, wrapping it violently around her neck from behind. Chloe had zero time to fight back, dragged away like a helpless lamb. He threw her into a horrific hidden room lined with weapons. Hector slammed her hard onto the floor, swinging a blade frantically. He screamed hysterically that she would pay for betraying him twice. Blood splattered across the floor, and Chloe shrank into the corner, weeping for mercy. But Hector had completely lost his mind, smashing a heavy tool around the room. He roared that if he couldn't survive, she wouldn't either. With a sickening thud, a heavy blow struck her head, blood covering her face. As Hector turned to grab another weapon, the severely wounded Chloe used every ounce of her remaining strength to grab her phone from the blood. With a shaking voice, she dialed the police, sobbing for someone to save her. Fortunately, justice is never late. A few days later, Bryce walked into the office holding a briefcase. Looking ecstatic, Chloe was back to her usual elegant self. Sitting on the couch in a black dress, Bryce rushed over, beaming as he told her he had two pieces of incredible news. The first was that the wretched Hector had finally been locked up, and the one who turned him in was actually his other daughter, Haley. Chloe showed zero sympathy, merely mocking the two for destroying each other. Then she asked about the second piece of news. Bryce smiled warmly, pulling a tablet from his briefcase and handing it over. He revealed that he stayed up all night finishing the prototypes for her company's next high-end collection, asking her to check the concepts. Chloe took the tablet, her eyes lighting up at the stunning designs. Her worries instantly vanished as she praised his incredible talent. Bryce smiled dotingly, promising to start mass production right away. But Chloe, now a true corporate queen, had much bigger plans. She smiled mysteriously, shaking her head. She declared that these dresses would be ultra-exclusive, one-of-a-kind pieces. Bryce blinked, a bit confused by the word exclusive. Chloe stood up, a sharp, ambitious glint in her eyes. She began sketching out her grand vision for the company's future. She planned to host the city's most exclusive fashion gala in 2 weeks, using international models to completely redefine their brand. She wanted a total media blitz to rocket their credibility into the stratosphere, setting the stage for absolute global expansion. Looking at his sister, who had survived hell to become something so brilliant, Bryce could only smile with immense pride. He adjusted his glasses, completely devoted, and promised to handle everything. 2 weeks later, the exclusive fashion gala took off exactly as planned. The venue was dazzling, completely taking the high society by storm. Wealthy socialites crowded around Chloe, desperate to buy the pieces. They complained that Bryce used to only design for Haley, making his work impossible for anyone else to get. Basking in the endless flattery, Chloe swirled her champagne under the lights. She flashed a stunning, victorious smile. The old enemy was totally ruined, and she was finally standing on the ashes of everyone who betrayed her, ruling as the undisputed queen of the city. Backstage at the gala, Chloe walked out of the restroom and ran straight into Bryce, who was pacing around anxiously. The second he saw her, his voice trembled with pure excitement. He revealed that the 5 exclusive gowns were sold out instantly. Dozens of top socialites were practically begging for long-term contracts. Chloe let out a sigh of relief, knowing their first major step was a massive success. Meanwhile, Austin's life was spiraling out of control. Still hungover from the night before, a text from Chloe summoned him to her office. Austin rubbed his temples, nervously trying to gauge her reaction. He asked if she was the one who brought him home, worried he said something stupid. Chloe just stared at him with a knowing, playful smirk. Austin panicked completely, apologizing like a scolded child. He humbly confessed that he didn't care what secret she was keeping from him. Looking at this powerful man who loved her so deeply yet felt so insecure, Chloe's heart filled with a bittersweet warmth. She teasingly brought up how he had clung to her last night, begging her not to leave. Austin's face flushed a deep crimson. Then Chloe led him into a room filled with red heart balloons and rose petals. Stunned by the romance, Austin gazed deeply into her eyes. He pulled out a diamond ring and slowly dropped to one knee. But the business world is a battlefield, and the enemy never sleeps. Later at the banquet, Austin spent the entire night shielding Chloe from the drinks. He took shot after shot until he could barely stand. Chloe worriedly helped the wasted Austin back to the bedroom. But the blurry-eyed Austin suddenly pulled her down onto the bed. Closing his eyes, he wept and called out her name. He whispered that he didn't care if she had someone else's child. He swore he would gladly be the stepfather, as long as she didn't leave him. Hearing this absurd, desperate, drunken confession, Chloe's face darkened. She had no idea his misunderstanding ran this dangerously deep. The next morning, a fresh crisis erupted. Her assistant burst into the office, panicked over a massive scandal online. A rival heiress had posted a scathing smear piece against Chloe's brand. She claimed the dresses were cheap, dangerous, and poorly made. Right then, Austin walked in carrying an investigation report. He told Chloe that Snyder was definitely the mastermind behind this smear campaign. Furthermore, Snyder was also the one who ordered the hit on her life. He revealed the driver had been caught and confessed to everything. Realizing Chloe was calling a press conference to fight back, the terrified heiress called Snyder, begging for help, but the ruthless Snyder abandoned her instantly. He cursed her out over the phone, calling her a useless fool. He snapped that her manufactured evidence wouldn't hold up and pulled his funding. Completely abandoned, the heiress snapped under the pressure. In a fit of pure madness, she took a pair of shears to her own high-end gown. She aggressively shredded the fabric, desperate to fake proof of bad quality. On the day of the press conference, she boldly displayed the ruined dress. Right on cue, Bryce stepped onto the stage with absolute authority. He took one look at the fabric and let out a cold laugh, declaring it a fake. The heiress tried to argue, but Bryce calmly dropped a tactical bomb. He revealed that every single dress he designed had a hidden, completely unreplicable security stitch woven into the seams. When the staff brought out an authentic piece for comparison, her Her cheaply made counterfeit was instantly exposed for the trash it was. With undeniable proof under the flashing cameras, the heiress went pale, ruined, with nowhere left to turn. She later fell to her knees before Chloe in private. She sobbed that Snyder had forced her into it, begging for mercy. Chloe's eyes softened slightly, showing unexpected grace. She went along with the situation and hired the girl as her personal assistant. Watching from the side, Austin immediately caught on to her strategy. He realized Chloe was playing a much bigger game, using the girl to completely trap Haley and Snyder once and for all. Just when everyone thought the war was won, a broken Haley was plotting in the dark. She slipped into that horrific hidden room under the cover of night. From the bottom shelf, she stole a heavy object wrapped tightly in white cloth. Next, Haley went to the prison visiting room. Behind the glass, a gaunt Hector screamed and slammed the bars in a total rage. He cursed Haley, screaming that he should have finished her off long ago. Facing his explosive wrath, Haley felt absolutely nothing. She merely smirked, mocking him for trying to threaten her from behind bars. Hector swallowed his rage, desperate for a lifeline. He begged her to look to Snyder to get him out, swearing he couldn't take another second. Looking at the man who had given her a lifetime of nightmares, Haley brutally refused, telling him to rot. Seeing his last hope vanish, Hector let out a desperate animalistic growl. He glared at her, dropping his absolute final bargaining chip. He hissed that the ashes of Chloe's mother were hidden in his secret room. The moment she heard the word ashes, Haley froze right at the door. Her feet felt like they were glued to the ground. An even more twisted, lethal plot instantly sparked in her mind. The scene opened with a completely manic Haley standing on the rooftop. Gnashing her teeth, she stabbed a blade into the white bag on the ground. She screamed that she was going to destroy everything Chloe cared about. The next second, she violently threw Chloe to the floor. As Haley lunged forward to drag Chloe over the edge with her, Austin and Bryce kicked the rooftop doors open and charged in. With no escape left, Haley grabbed Chloe by the neck, putting a cold blade right against her throat, screaming at everyone to back off. Ignoring Austin's desperate pleas, Haley roared hysterically. She demanded to know why he rejected her love just to team up with Chloe. Austin confessed with tears in his eyes that he was sorry, begging her to let Chloe go. But Haley was far too gone, grabbing Chloe and leaping straight off the roof. In that split second between life and death, Austin threw himself over the ledge. At the absolute last second, he caught Chloe's falling hand. After surviving the terrifying ordeal, a shaken Chloe collapsed into Austin's arms. In that profound moment, their hearts were permanently fused together. Once the dust settled, Austin dressed in a sharp suit before their loved ones. He dropped to one knee, offering his girl the most romantic proposal. Looking into his eyes, Chloe smiled through her tears and said yes. Amidst the cheers and a shower of flower petals, they held each other tight. Bryce, who had always protected her from the shadows, stepped forward. He formally placed Chloe's hand into Austin's, warning him never to break her heart. As everyone lost themselves in the joyous wedding celebration, Austin slipped away to the kitchen to show off his cooking skills. But the moment Chloe looked down at her phone in the living room, her smile froze. She had just received a terrifying text sent from Haley around 2 o'clock. The message warned her that if she didn't want her mother's remains destroyed, she had to come to the old house alone. With a warning that she was watching, threatened with her mother's memory, Chloe turned around with a heavy heart. Once again, she stepped completely alone into the viper's nest, but Chloe could never have guessed how deep the roots of the enemy went. In a hidden piece of footage from the past, an operative was holding a chemical agent brutally blackmailing Ruby, who was working as Chloe's secretary. They forced her to play along with the trap to ruin Austin. The highly perceptive Chloe had actually noticed her secretary acting strange. She had even dropped subtle hints in the office, testing the guilty Ruby, but the tragedy happened anyway. That night in the hotel room, the laced drink hit Austin hard. He gasped for air, tearing at his collar before blacking out on the bed. Moments later, the door slid open, but it wasn't Haley who walked in. It was Ruby, the secretary who had completely sold Chloe out. Ruby mocked Austin for having a weak tolerance, pulling out her phone. She snapped intimate photos of them together on the bed, manufacturing the exact misunderstanding that nearly broke Chloe and Austin apart. After pulling off the scheme, Ruby quickly resigned and went into hiding. Back in the present, Bryce reported Ruby's sudden departure to Chloe. He also revealed a bizarre piece of corporate intelligence. A rival conglomerate had inexplicably injected $60 million into Ruby's nearly bankrupt family business. As Chloe tried to make sense of this strange move in the industry, Austin walked in with a stack of wedding plans, sitting right next to her. He teased her warmly, saying that since his rival took care of the dress, he had to make sure the rest of the wedding was absolutely perfect. Looking at the man who treasured her above all else, Chloe leaned into his chest, feeling incredibly blessed. But right outside that room filled with love, the hidden Ruby stood silently in a white coat at the dark corner of the hallway. Clutching her files, she stared through the glass window with venomous, envious eyes at the happy couple inside. The calm before the storm was instantly shattered as a greater threat grew. In the office, Chloe and Austin sat together on the couch, working through files. Chloe casually flipped through her tablet, mentioning that Ruby quit today. Hearing the name, Austin froze for a second before playing it cool. He replied that it was probably for the best, removing a threat from her side. But Chloe's gaze held a sharp intensity as she looked at him. She quietly asked him if he wasn't even a little curious why she suddenly quit. Without waiting for an answer, Chloe dropped a massive piece of news. She revealed that the old tycoon had suddenly injected $60 million into Ruby's firm. Austin frowned, admitting he had heard rumors about the transaction. Chloe's suspicion deepened as she wondered aloud why two companies with zero history would suddenly move that much cash. She reminded him that he was close with the tycoon, and asked him to dig around to see why he would back a failing shell company. Austin's eyes flickered, quickly agreeing before changing the subject. He deeply looked at her, suggesting they go get their marriage license tomorrow. But Chloe just looked back at her screen, calmly telling him to wait until after the wedding. The scene shifted outside the corporate headquarters. The displaced Ruby had changed into a bold red shirt, flanked by two associates. She aggressively cut off Chloe as she was taking a walk. Oozing arrogance, Ruby mocked Chloe for looking so lively now that she was a wealthy heiress once again. Chloe gave her a freezing look, offering nothing but a polite congratulations. But Ruby wouldn't let it go, stepping right into Chloe's personal space. Whispering venomously in her ear, she made a dangerous promise. She swore she would deliver an unforgettable gift on Chloe's wedding next month. The source of Ruby's sudden confidence was quickly revealed. Chloe returned to her office, and Sam locked the door with a grave expression. He nervously reported that according to his private investigation, Austin had gone to the hotel alone on the 17th of last month. Even more shocking, Ruby had rushed over there right after her shift. Sam handed over a flash drive containing the leaked security footage. Chloe's heart instantly shattered into pieces. Fighting back the tears, she ordered Sam out and demanded total secrecy. As she sat alone, stroking her stomach with a racing mind, Austin received a devastating message from Ruby. On the other side, it was a photo of a positive pregnancy test, followed by a lethal text. Once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew out of control. A few days later, Chloe called her assistant, telling him to drop off a blanket for Austin so he wouldn't freeze at the office. But the assistant let slip a shocking detail over the line. He revealed the boss had been leaving incredibly early every single day. The words hit Chloe like a physical blow. Stroking her pregnant belly, all the warmth vanished from her eyes. She hung up the phone and immediately hired an investigator to find Austin. Following the trail, Chloe marched straight to room 1802 at the hotel. Inside, Austin was furiously ripping his hand away from Ruby, giving an ultimatum. He told her he would give her a fortune to either leave the country and raise it, or terminate the pregnancy at the clinic. First thing tomorrow. But a disheveled Ruby clung to him, weeping that she didn't care about a title. She claimed she just wanted to be with him, even if he married Chloe. Seeing him refuse, Ruby's face turned vicious as she pulled out her phone. She threatened to send the intimate photos from that night straight to Chloe. With a loud crash, Chloe slammed the door open from the outside. Looking at the two of them disheveled and pulling at each other, her world ended. Caught in the act, Ruby showed zero shame, turning on Chloe instead. She screamed that Chloe had no right to judge her, throwing old history in her face and asking why she acted so innocent. With a final threat to Austin to back off from her family, Ruby walked out proud. Left alone in the room, Austin panicked, grabbing Chloe's shoulders. He frantically screamed that he was set up and nothing happened that night. But Chloe was already covered in tears, pushing him away in total despair. She called him a liar and a fool for letting himself get played so easily. The brutal reality left their entire marriage hanging by a thread. However, the villain's victory didn't last long. The second Ruby stepped foot back into her family estate, her father leveled her with a massive, deafening slap to the face. The blow knocked Ruby straight to the floor as her father shook with rage. He screamed that she was a failure, revealing that the tycoon had just called to pull every cent of his funding. The news of the pullout hit like a lightning bolt, pushing the firm to bankruptcy. Panic-stricken, Ruby grabbed her phone and dialed Austin again. The moment he picked up, she hysterically threatened him, asking if he was truly ready to be ruined by the release of the security tapes. But Austin's voice held zero fear, only a freezing contempt. He told her to go ahead and post it, noting it would finally clear his name. He revealed that Bryce had already run a full check at the clinic, proving she was never even pregnant in the first place. Finding her fake pregnancy completely exposed, Ruby turned pale as ice. Austin dropped his final ultimatum, ordering her to clear his name to Chloe by 3 o'clock tomorrow, or watch her family legacy burn. Beside her, her furious father snapped, attacking Ruby in a total blind rage. Finally, the dark clouds parted. Chloe walked into the living room of the old estate, knowing the whole truth. Austin held her tight with bloodshot eyes, weeping and begging for another chance. Looking at the man who had nearly torn the city apart just to prove his innocence. The ice in Chloe's heart dissolved into tears of profound relief. She wrapped her arms around him, choosing forgiveness. After the storm came the most beautiful rainbow. Austin deeply dropped to one knee, taking Chloe's hand. He made a sacred vow, asking her to finally marry him. This guy getting publicly dragged by a billionaire heiress is named Tyler. He just walked into the room wearing his bathrobe, only to get slammed by his fiancée, Chloe, with endless insults. Chloe reminded him that his lavish lifestyle was pure charity from her family. She even grabbed his towel, screaming like a lunatic, demanding to know where the perfume smell and alcohol came from. In this house, Tyler was nothing but a trophy husband, a spineless man with zero dignity. While they were in the middle of a massive fight, a designer named Julian pushed the door open with a girl in black. This uninvited guest was the pole dancing teacher Jessica, whom Julian brought along just to experience the high life. Nobody noticed that the second Jessica walked into the room, the look she shared with Tyler was dripping with a strange chemistry. And when Chloe casually decided to hire Jessica as her private instructor, a knowing smirk flashed across Jessica's face, because nobody knew better than her exactly what men craved. Truth was, this wasn't their first rodeo. Not long ago, in a loud, crowded nightclub, Jessica was tearing it up on stage while Tyler stared from the crowd. A calculated bump in the hallway, a playful tease with a bracelet, their heavy breathing when they stood inches apart. A fire had already been lit between them. But the real shocker came right after. Jessica's actual name was Serena, the lost daughter of the Miller family, whose life had been completely ruined by Chloe's father. She hid her name and played this dangerous game, even using herself as bait to seduce Tyler, all because he was the lethal weapon in her revenge plot. Back at the mansion, when everyone cleared out, Tyler couldn't resist trapping Jessica against the wall, demanding to know her real agenda. But Jessica just gave him a wicked smile and whispered, "Pure lust." Chloe's sudden entrance broke up their little moment. Jessica instantly flipped into innocent mode, pretending she got lost while feeding Chloe's massive ego. She even smiled and took a charity gala ticket from Chloe, even though it was handed to her like a piece of absolute trash. Then, the head of the family, Arthur, walked downstairs. The second his eyes hit Jessica, he locked his brows, feeling like her face looked incredibly familiar. Jessica played it off smoothly, calling herself a generic face, but the moment Arthur turned his back, the terrifying, icy look in Jessica's eyes proved a storm was coming. To make sure she built an unstoppable enemy for Arthur's empire, Jessica secretly contacted a mysterious partner, spinning a deadly trap right before the gala. Meanwhile, over in the studio, the arrogant Chloe was throwing a massive tantrum because she couldn't master the steps. She ordered Jessica to make her an expert within 10 days, facing the spoiled brat's drama. Jessica played along, but the moment Chloe left, she went right back to flirting with Tyler, who had just walked in to bring some juice. One glass of juice and a line like "It is sweet, try some." Tyler's throat tightened as his mind went into total chaos. Finally, the night of the charity gala arrived. Chloe wore a stunning dress, soaking up endless compliments. But the second Jessica showed up in a sleek black gown, she was instantly targeted by creepy guys with sleazy comments. Right when Jessica was fighting off a handsy guest, Tyler lost his absolute mind, rushing over and kicking the guy across the floor. He didn't care about the Hyde's and Society guests, or the humiliation it brought to his fiancée, Chloe. He grabbed Jessica's hand and bolted out of the room, leaving the entire crowd standing there in pure shock. In a deserted stairwell, Tyler lost his temper, growling at Jessica for being too greedy. But fate loved a twisted joke. Right at that moment, the voices of Arthur and his partner echoed through the door. They were arguing over splitting the cash from selling off Tyler's family assets. That stolen conversation exposed a horrifying truth to the two inside. The bankruptcy of Tyler's family and his parents' tragic suicide were entirely a cold, Zen-blooded murder plotted by Arthur. The truth hit Tyler like a physical blow. He had been treating his enemy like a father, taking all the abuse, only to find out he was marrying the daughter of his parents' killer. Looking at the broken man drowning in despair, Jessica slipped a hotel room key into his hand. She looked him dead in the eye and dropped a heavy question. "Don't you want blood for blood?" Carrying the exact same burning hatred, the two lonely souls formed a lethal alliance right there. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hotel, the completely clueless Chloe was prepping her trashy plan. She acted unusually sweet, handing Tyler a glass of warm milk, but she had already dumped a strange powder into it. Facing his cold shoulder, Chloe dropped her robe strap, trying to force herself onto him, but Tyler's pure disgust for her beat the drug's effect. He gagged violently, using his phone to record the evidence. He refused to touch her, shoving the screaming girl away. He stumbled out of the room on shaking legs. Losing his mind to the drug, Tyler followed his raw instinct, banging desperately on the door of room Arting Yo at the hotel. Jessica was already waiting inside. When the heat of the drug merged with their shared hatred, Tyler and Jessica lost all control, locking into a desperate kiss Hadabu past the point of no return. Back at the estate, Chloe was smashing vases in a blind fury because she couldn't find Tyler anywhere. She dialed Jessica's number in a rage, ordering her to come over and teach her some moves to seduce her man. But all she got on the line was a lazy, mocking laugh from Jessica, who was lying naked in Tyler's arms. Jessica kept her voice perfectly calm, describing the intimacy in vivid detail on the phone. Hearing the exact sweet talk her own man used, Chloe felt a physical shock, completely breaking down. Chloe cried into the phone, asking her fiancé what he was doing, but she had no idea Tyler was tangled up in a hotel bed with another woman. When the woman woke up, Tyler held her hand gently, asking why she was really targeting the family. Cuddled up in his chest, she admitted she just wanted cash. The family was loaded, and one dance lesson from her made more money than a whole month of regular work. Tyler's eyes flashed as he made a proposition. Why not team up and strip the family of every single dollar they stole? The next day, the second Tyler walked back into the mansion, Chloe launched into a furious interrogation. She crossed her arms, looking at him with an icy glare, screaming that she searched for him all night while he gave zero answers. But the family's empire was facing a much bigger crisis. In the living room, Arthur was screaming into his phone like a maniac. A rival company had just hijacked their entire supply chain. The big pre-sale was launching next week, but Dagoying Shun just ghosted them at the worst possible time. Arthur was on the verge of a total breakdown, ordering his staff to find the rat inside the firm. Chloe walked up nervously to check on the situation, only to get violently shoved onto the couch by her ticking Zan bomb father. Arthur pointed at his daughter's face, screaming that if she hadn't rejected the billionaire heir to marry this loser Tyler, the company wouldn't be facing billions in damages and a life of ruin. Cut to a private apartment later that afternoon. The mistress who had been sleeping with Tyler was lounging on a couch, scrolling through her tablet. She suggested using media accounts to blow up the family's crisis online. Even if the empire didn't fully collapse, she wanted to make sure they bled out completely. Nasty look crossed her face when she found out Tyler owned a factory. She cooked up a twisted plan right there. Tyler would offer Arthur a partnership to bail him out, but when the final delivery date arrived, they would swap the real products with defective garbage. Using someone else's hands to commit the murder would create an inescapable trap for Arthur's legacy. A few days later, they sat across from each other at the table. Arthur, Chloe, Tyler, and the mysterious woman. Tyler spoke first, mentioning the rumors of their bankruptcy online. He faked a worried look, asking why Arthur wanted to team up, claiming he worked close to Chloe and didn't want the firm to fall. The woman joined the act, playing sweet with Chloe. Backed into a corner, Arthur dropped his guard completely. He stood up, thanking them with a grateful smile, totally clueless that he just stepped into an open grave. With the trap set, Jessica and the woman met in private. Jessica was fixing her makeup in front of the mirror. The woman casually mentioned that Chloe seemed incredibly happy today. Jessica smiled arrogantly, soaking it up. She bragged that the family's cash flow was fixed. Her private checks on the hotel rooms showed zero signs of cheating. The maid had even told her that Tyler was secretly designing a custom diamond necklace for her birthday. The clever woman played along, suggesting that since things were going great, she should throw a massive bash to give Tyler some serious bragging rights in high society. Soon, the night of Chloe's birthday gala arrived packed with guests. The high Zan society wives crowded around the glowing Chloe, gossiping that the bankruptcy rumors were just fake news online. The family was clearly still the apex predator in the city. Everyone praised Chloe's dress, but noted her bare neck. Chloe touched her collarbone, bragging with total confidence that her fiancé's custom necklace would arrive any minute. But while the guests looked around for Tyler, the doors flew open. Tyler walked into the ballroom in a sharp tuxedo, but wrapped tightly around his arm was the mysterious woman. Chloe froze like she had been struck by lightning. She charged forward like a maniac, swinging her hand for a slap. But Tyler caught her wrist in a vice grip. Looking down at his fiancée with ice in his eyes, he humiliated her right in front of the entire elite crowd. "You don't get to touch her," he said coldly. Facing her fiancé's public betrayal, Chloe screamed hysterically. She reminded Tyler that every piece of wealth and power he had was a handout from her family's empire. She threatened to strip him of everything until he was nothing. But Tyler just let out a disgusted laugh, admitting he had been sick of her face for a very long time. Chloe kept screaming, asking if he thought he could even get a job without her family pulling strings behind his back. But Tyler didn't give her another look, turning around and walking out of the ballroom, ignoring the desperate cries of his name fading behind him. Truth was, Tyler had built this trap piece by piece. Flashback to an earlier meeting in a dark room. The woman asked if Chloe was still giving him a hard time. Tyler looked totally disgusted, calling Chloe a psycho, swearing the family wouldn't survive the month. He had targeted their latest multi-Zen million-dollar jewelry line. He knew if the company failed to deliver on time, the massive breached Zan contract fines would shatter their cash flow. To seal their fate, Tyler went through the shipping records, finding out the supplier was a logistics firm. He leaked the secret to the family's biggest rivals. Those corporate sharks eagerly cut off the shipment for themselves. Tyler and his partner just had to sit back and watch the entire empire burn to the ground. The final showdown exploded inside the corporate office. Arthur's face was twisted in rage, staring at Tyler and the woman. The truth finally hit him like a brick wall. He gritted his teeth, asking if the two orchestrated this mess. Tyler leaned back arrogantly, letting out a cold laugh. "Looks like you finally grew a brain," he sneered. Chloe completely lost it, charging at them like a rabid dog, only to get casually thrown to the floor by Tyler, looking pathetic. Arthur stared at his useless daughter, cursing her for losing her man. Then he pointed at Tyler's face, throwing out one last threat, warning them that if his family went under, he'd murder them first. But the era of the family empire was already dead. Inside the getaway car, the mysterious woman took off her mask, revealing her true identity to the world. Watching the broken father and daughter through the window, she felt a wave of pure, satisfying victory. She turned to Tyler with a dark smile, noting Arthur was finished, how she had finally avenged the murder of her parents. Tyler held her hand tightly, comforting her that the debt was paid. Everything was ready for the final execution. The empire collapsed into nothing but historical dust. The group had been suffering endless bad luck lately. The CEO was smashing his phone in the living room because the supplies they received were absolute garbage. The company website was getting destroyed by angry reviews, but that cash reserves couldn't even cover the refunds. Chloe suggested stealing funds from their subsidiary Fire, but when they rushed over to the building, they froze. The entrance of Fire was packed with media cameras. Tyler was standing there with Jessica, who wore a sleek coat. The reporter asked a brutal question, demanding to know how Tyler bought out the shares overnight to steal the firm, but if the new name was a combination of their initials. Chloe went wild, screaming that this was her family's property. But with one cold nod from Jessica, the security guards stepped in, dragging the screaming Chloe and her father out like trash back home. Chloe faced the terrifying rage of her father. Inside a dark basement room lined with heavy chains, Arthur grabbed Chloe by her hair, growling into her face. He told her the man she loved had moved all their money, that entire family legacy was completely ruined. Arthur threatened to kill her if the company collapsed. Chloe collapsed to the floor, begging for her life. To save her skin, she offered to beg a billionaire heir, promising to marry into his family to get their supplies back. Arthur stared at his daughter like a piece of meat, ordering her to get the goods and an 80 million dowry. To save her family, Chloe humiliated herself at a bar. She promised the heir she would do whatever he wanted if he cleared the company debts and returned the cargo. The heir unbuckled his belt, throwing it at her feet, asking if she was truly ready to do anything. Chloe picked up the heavy leather belt with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, Arthur's private search turned up a terrifying secret. The morgue records showed Serena's body had vanished years ago. The news sent a freezing chill down Arthur's spine. That same night, Jessica was ambushed by a masked man in a park. At the life or death moment, Julian rushed in to fight the thug, but he took a deep knife wound straight to the stomach. The attacker fled, leaving Julian bleeding out on the grass while Jessica held his head, crying hysterically. At the hospital room, Julian lay weak on the mattress, comforting Jessica that her big brother would always protect her. Jessica wept, admitting that if he hadn't faked her death or sneaked her out of the country, she'd be dead like her mother. Suddenly, Tyler kicked the door open, his face dark with jealousy. Out in the hallway, Tyler angrily demanded to know their history. Jessica explained they weren't related by blood, but Julian was the brother who raised her from the ashes. That cousin act was just a cover to get close to Chloe. She held Tyler's hand, kissing him until his anger vanished. But Arthur had gone completely insane, screaming at his hitman on the phone for failing to kidnap a single woman. He told Chloe he suspected the dance teacher was Serena. Armed with the truth, Chloe went straight to Tyler to cause trouble. Standing by the fountain, she told him the woman wasn't Jessica. Her real name was Serena, the daughter of her stepmother. She claimed the mother-and-daughter duo had always wanted their money. Serena was just using Tyler as a tool for revenge. Tyler refused to believe a word, shoving Chloe away coldly. "Looking at your face reminds me of my dead parents," he spat. Chloe watched him walk away, whispering that he would regret it. The seed of doubt grew into a massive monster. Tyler went to the hospital room, asking Serena with an icy voice if her love was real or if she was just playing him. Serena wept bitterly, claiming he was her only anchor in life. Tyler's heart melted and he quickly apologized. But behind his back, Serena's eyes turned sharp and deadly, thinking to herself that this was the absolute last time she'd use him, cause she would pay him back tenfold once she got the deeds. The next day, Serena went back to the mansion with Tyler to pack. The second they walked in, Chloe started mocking them. Chloe lured Tyler up to the study, turning on a monitor. The screen showed Serena alone in the basement, searching the room. Chloe exposed her with a malicious grin. "Serena just used you to get the stock agreements," she laughed. The only thing she ever cared about was the money. Looking at the physical proof, Tyler's trust shattered. He walked downstairs with fury burning in his eyes. Facing the clueless Serena who walked up to check on him, Tyler snapped, grabbing her by the throat, roaring into her face. "How long were you planning to lie to me, Serena?" The scene opened with Tyler waking up with a heavy headache. The woman next to him cuddled close, whispering slurs, claiming Jessica was gone and she was his woman now. But Tyler threw her off the mattress without a single care. When the camera zoomed out, the woman was a messy Chloe. Turns out Tyler had resisted the drug and never touched her. He pulled his clothes on, calling her a disgusting brat who drugged men just to slide into their beds. Tyler warned her that even if she used photos to blackmail him, a blood debt between their families would never be erased. But But Chloe's methods went much lower than that. To secure massive checks, she had been selling herself to wealthy clients who abused her in dark rooms. Inside a sketchy VIP lounge, Chloe was taking the hits, but she had no idea that outside the glass window, Serena had recorded the entire scandal on her phone. Armed with the ultimate weapon, Serena made her move. Even though her initial search for the deeds had failed because Arthur swapped the real documents with blank paper, even though she and Tyler had a massive blowout in the club, screaming horrible insults and breaking up for good, the second she found out Arthur moved her mother's grave, she lost her absolute mind with rage. To find her mother's resting place, Serena stormed the mansion alone. Facing Arthur's disgusting demands, she swallowed her tears, falling to her knees and bowing her head to her enemy. But the monster just grabbed her by her hair, laughing maniacally, revealing he had dug her mother up and scattered the ashes to the wind. Her mother's horrific fate lit a final fire of destruction in her heart. At Sawulaundan, she texted Chloe a final blackmail threat. When Chloe burst into the room, screaming at her for stalking, Serena flashed the explicit tape on her screen, ordering Chloe to swap it for the real corporate deeds, to save her own reputation and keep her father from killing her. The terrified Chloe chose to betray her own family. While Arthur was asleep, she sneaked into the safe room, stealing the real agreements that controlled the empire. With the files secured, Chloe still bragged arrogantly to Serena about her upcoming wedding and dress fittings with Tyler. But holding the real contract, Serena just let out a cold laugh, calling Julian to get the lawyers ready to seize the properties. Finally, the most expensive wedding in the city arrived. Chloe stood in her massive white gown, waiting for the vows. Under the priest's orders, Tyler placed the ring on her finger, his face completely blank and filled with pure disgust. Right when the priest yelled, "You may kiss the bride," ecstatic Chloe closed her eyes for the moment. The giant screens in the ballroom suddenly flickered, broadcasting the explicit tapes of Chloe's secret scandals. The sleazy audio blasted through the entire venue, turning the luxury wedding into a horrific public circus. The High Zan Society guests pointed fingers, whispering in shock, while Chloe stared at the screens, screaming for security to turn it off. Right in the middle of the wreckage of the family name, the grand doors of the ballroom were kicked open. Serena walked in wearing a Jadzan dropping gold gown. She looked like a victorious queen taking her throne, walking down the aisle under the stunned stares of the crowd. Looking at her ruined enemies on the stage, Serena smiled, dropping one final brutal line of mockery. "Do you like the wedding gift I picked out for you? A blood debt that took 15 long years to settle." Serena had finally destroyed her enemies at their highest moment. This girl in the yellow floral dress is Chloe. She's happily telling her employee she's getting married and closing the shop. But who would have thought? On the very night she paid out wages, the power suddenly went out. The employee was lighting candles when a masked man in black burst in. He covered her mouth before she could scream. The man whispered that he'd been drugged and was running for his life. In that pitch-black, isolated flower shop, passion took over. The next morning, the mysterious man woke up and looked at the sleeping girl. He realized, miraculously, his severe pollen allergy was completely gone. It was a wild drugged accident, but the man was honorable. He left a luxury watch on the table as a promise to return and marry her. But here's the kicker. That man was Ethan, the billionaire CEO of the prestigious Logan Group. The moment Ethan left, he called his secretary to fetch his future bride, but fate was about to play a massive joke on everyone. Chloe, the shop owner, came back early and saw the priceless watch. She immediately took it and put it on her own wrist. When the secretary arrived with engagement jewelry and saw Chloe wearing the watch, he naturally assumed she was the savior from the night before. Meanwhile, the real girl, Serena, was completely kept in the dark. But Serena had bigger problems to worry about as she rushed to her grandmother's house. The moment she stepped into the yard, she saw her deadbeat father, Arthur, along with her toxic stepmother, Victoria, and her manipulative stepsister, Amber. They were literally manhandling her grandmother alongside Amber's fiancé, Derek. Turns out, they wanted to force Serena into an arranged marriage with the Logan family. Faced with these shameless parasites, Serena ripped off their masks. Years ago, Arthur married into Serena's family and took over her grandfather's company. Yet before her mother was even cold in her grave, he brought his mistress home. He threw Serena and her grandmother out on the street. To make things worse, Amber even stole Serena's fiancé Derek. Faced with their threats and bribes, Serena didn't say a single word. She grabbed a bucket of ice water and threw it right in their faces. She drenched all four of those dressed-up monsters from head to toe. But these parasites wouldn't give up so easily. Victoria threatened to cut off her grandmother's medical bills unless Serena agreed to the marriage. She offered Serena $500,000 to be the proxy bride. Serena, needing the money for her grandmother, raised the stakes to $5 million. Cut to Ethan, who was being pressured by his own grandmother to marry. She brought out the childhood betrothal contract with Serena's family. To satisfy his family and stabilize his position in the corporate war, Ethan agreed. On the day of the payout, Serena slammed the marriage certificate on the table. She demanded the money from her father's family immediately, but Victoria immediately started crying poverty, trying to scam her way out of it. Serena wasn't having it, and coldly reminded them the courts were still open. She threatened to divorce Ethan immediately unless she got her $5 million. Arthur slammed the table in a rage, but Victoria knew she was caught. She painfully pulled out a card with $500,000, trying to pay her off, but she never expected Serena to be 3 steps ahead. Serena pulled out a voice recorder, playing Victoria's promise to pay $5 million. Just as the family's dirty laundry was exposed, the doors burst open. Ethan stepped in, looking sharp in his custom suit, flanked by security and lawyers. He pulled Serena into his arms, announcing to the room, "I am Serena's husband, Ethan Logan." Seeing the rumored ugly and ruthless heir was actually a total knockout. Amber's face turned green with pure unadulterated jealousy, but the real bombshell was yet to come. Ethan had his lawyer read her grandfather's final will and testament. It revealed that once Serena turned 23 and married, she'd inherit Redwood Group. That's $300 million worth of controlling shares. Combined with her late mother's shares, Serena was now the absolute boss of Redwood. Hearing this, Arthur literally had a panic attack and collapsed into his chair. The entire family descended into pure chaos. Serena and Ethan turned around and walked out without looking back. In the hallway, a bitter Derek and Amber tried to save face. Derek mocked Ethan for being an illegitimate son raised overseas. He even called Serena a brainless, empty shell of a woman. But before the words could leave his mouth, Derek's phone rang. A panicked voice informed him that Logan Group had terminated all contracts with his family. The news hit Derek like a lightning bolt, draining all the color from his face. He and Amber had no choice but to run away with their tails between their legs. Even though Serena and Ethan's marriage was just a legal contract on paper, and even though Serena thought Ethan loved someone else, the gears of true love had already begun to turn for them. Soon after, the CEO got a call saying his official girlfriend had arrived, but who would have guessed? The girl handing him pink roses and wishing him a happy date was actually Serena, his legally wedded wife. Serena teased him about not calling her Mrs. Logan anymore. As they walked down the hotel corridor, Ethan was visibly sweating. Their marriage was supposed to be a closely guarded secret. Ethan even needed to hide the marriage from the woman he was about to meet. Serena played along perfectly, offering to pretend to be his assistant. She even jokingly asked what kind of beauty could captivate the great Ethan Logan. But the moment the VIP door opened, Ethan froze, and Serena gasped in absolute shock. Chloe, the woman standing there in a red off-the-shoulder dress, was indeed Chloe. Chloe smiled, claiming they were just old neighbors who hadn't seen each other in years. At the table, Ethan introduced Serena merely as his subordinate. Watching them catch up, Serena felt a sharp pang of irony in her heart. Later, Chloe pulled Serena into the restroom. The second the door closed, Chloe's smile vanished instantly. She washed her hands, glaring at Serena through the mirror. "Don't tell me your rich catches Ethan," she spat. Chloe swore to herself she would never let Serena stay near him. Pretending to be a sweet friend, she praised Ethan's wealth and looks. Then she dropped the act, demanding Serena leave the company. She offered to pay for her grandmother's medical bills if Serena resigned immediately. Serena refused on the spot, but before they could argue further, Two heavily intoxicated men burst straight into the women's restroom. Faced with the drunkard's aggressive advances, Serena shielded Chloe. She screamed that she was calling the cops, but the men didn't care. One of them shoved Serena violently to the tiled floor. At that exact split second, Ethan and his security slammed the door open. Seeing the chaos, Ethan went into a blind, protective rage. "Touch my woman again and you die," he roared, knocking the men down. But ironically, Ethan rushed straight past Serena to hold a crying Chloe, while Serena, his actual wife, was left bleeding in the far corner. Suddenly, another attacker hiding behind the door pulled a switchblade. He lunged straight at Ethan's unprotected back. Without a second thought, Serena screamed, "Watch out!" She threw her own body forward, taking the blade right in the torso. Serena collapsed into Ethan's arms, blood dripping from her lips. Ethan completely lost his mind, beating the attacker within an inch of his life. He scooped Serena up and sprinted frantically toward the emergency room. Outside the operating room, staring at the red light, Ethan's world shattered. He privately confessed to Chloe that he and Serena were already married, but he claimed it was just a temporary contract for the family estate. But Chloe's heart was already consumed by dark, toxic envy. She vowed that Ethan would belong to her, no matter the cost. Fortunately, Serena survived the grueling surgery and woke up. In the private room, Ethan gently fed her soup, one spoonful at a time. A tender, unspoken spark began to grow between them. Just then, Ethan's older brother and sister-in-law walked in. The brother sternly acknowledged Serena as a Logan bride, but he dragged Ethan into the hallway, screaming at him for canceling a major project. In the hallway, the brother accused Ethan of ruining vital corporate alliances. Ethan fired back, stating the partners were running a corrupt operation. As the brothers clashed, Derek showed up to play the victim. The older brother blindly ordered Ethan to bow his head and apologize. Derek gloated, publicly mocking Ethan for being a second-class heir. He sneered that Ethan didn't have the balls to stand up to his older brother. Just as Ethan was swallowing his pride, Serena appeared. Clad in her hospital gown, she forced her weak body forward. She threw a file of hard evidence directly at Derek's face. She exposed his entire embezzlement and kickback scheme to the light. Ethan gasped, asking why she was out of bed. Serena looked at him with fierce loyalty. "I am here to back you up." With undeniable proof, the older brother canceled the contracts on the spot. Derek fled like a scolded dog. But this confrontation revealed a shocking secret to Ethan. His severe tactile allergy to women completely disappeared whenever he touched Serena. But the danger was far from over. A vengeful Derek snuck back into the hospital room the moment Ethan left. Seeing Serena resting alone, Derek snapped completely. He pinned her down, maliciously laughing that her corrupt father was already selling off Redwood's assets while she was hospitalized. Derek tried to force her to marry him, but Serena fought back and slapped him hard. Infuriated, Derek threw his weight onto her, tearing at her clothes. Just as she reached utter despair, the door was kicked off its hinges. Ethan entered like a god of wrath, beating Derek into a bloody pulp. Security dragged Derek out like a dead animal. Ethan's hands were covered in blood as he held a trembling Serena. Serena ignored her own fear, frantically telling him about her father's board meeting. She cried that Arthur was selling her grandfather's legacy today. Ethan told her to breathe and handed her a thick folder. It contained absolute proof of every single crime her father committed. Serena looked at the files, her eyes turning cold and sharp. She refused Ethan's offer to handle it for her. She wanted to take back what was hers with her own two hands. The Redwood Group board meeting was already underway. Arthur stood at the podium, pretending to care about market transitions. He called for a vote to sell off Redwood's prime real estate. Lured by massive payouts, the board members raised their hands. The motion passed and Arthur smiled with sickening triumph. But at the final second before the gavel struck, the heavy doors exploded open. Serena rolled in on a wheelchair, flanked by Ethan-like royalty. "I object," she announced. Serena looked at her trembling father with a cold sneer. "Since you are too old to lead, Dad, I think it is time your daughter takes the chair." Right there in the executive boardroom, Arthur and Victoria, who were screaming and throwing water bottles seconds ago, were instantly slammed with handcuffs as police swarmed the room. Facing charges of massive tax evasion and corporate embezzlement, Serena doubled down. She demanded the police add attempted murder to the list, locking them away for good. After the storm passed, a deeply devoted Ethan visited Serena for her discharge. Looking at her beautiful face, Ethan gently wiped a stray smudge from her cheek, but as he pulled his hand back, he noticed his wrist was perfectly clear. His severe lifelong allergy was entirely non-existent around Serena. Was he truly completely cured by her presence? But their peace was short-lived. In the hospital lobby, they ran into Chloe. Chloe was pushing a heavily bandaged, wheelchair-bound Derek. She shamelessly begged Serena to drop the charges against her parents. Serena scoffed, seeing right through the fake tears. She warned Chloe to stop acting. Serena unleashed her full fury on the two of them. She blasted them for ruining her family and bringing mistresses into her home. She made it clear she wouldn't hesitate to throw Chloe in a cell next to them. With Ethan backing her up, her power was absolute, forcing the couple to retreat. To completely purge the company, Serena returned to the boardroom. Before the shareholders, she stripped Arthur and Victoria of all corporate titles. She appointed a trusted ally as the interim CEO. Arthur flew into a violent rage, but the new CEO dropped a mountain of evidence. Their bribery and corporate espionage were fully exposed to the public. Realizing he lost everything, a desperate Arthur snapped. He grabbed a glass bottle and hurled it violently at Serena's head. Meanwhile, learning of her parents' total downfall, Chloe watched the news. She shattered her phone against the wall in pure rage. She refused to let Serena win, and she refused to lose Ethan. She dialed Ethan's number immediately. Inside his car, Ethan was staring at his wedding ring. His mind was filled with images of Serena bleeding to save his life. In that definitive moment, Ethan knew he loved her more than life itself. She was the only woman he would gladly die to protect. To end it once and for all, Ethan arranged to meet Chloe. He slid a check for $30 million and a flower shop deed across the table. He coldly told her this would be their final meeting. Ethan admitted he only intended to marry her out of a sense of debt. But now, he had found his true love. Chloe broke down, hugging him from behind, screaming her twisted love for him. But Ethan cut through the lies with surgical precision. "You don't love me," he said. "You love the Logan name and the wealth." But as Ethan turned to walk away, a sudden wave of dizziness hit him. Chloe had filled the room's humidifier with a powerful sedative. She dragged his heavy, semi-conscious body onto the couch as he blacked out. Once the drugs wore off, Ethan reviewed his schedule with his secretary. To test a theory, he told his secretary to extend his hand. The moment Ethan's skin touched the secretary's, a massive, itchy rash flared up. The secretary gasped, noting the allergy was active against everyone except Chloe and Serena. Ethan's brows furrowed as a massive realization dawned on him. If Chloe was the girl from 2 years ago, why did his body only react to Serena? To uncover the truth, Ethan helped Serena move into his private apartment. He treated her with utmost care while ordering a deep background check on Chloe. Meanwhile, the Logan estate was buzzing with wedding preparations. His sister-in-law and grandmother were happily picking out bridal jewelry for Serena. The grandmother lovingly placed a priceless heirloom necklace around Serena's neck. The sister-in-law smiled, revealing she personally designed the wedding gown. Later, the grandmother showed Serena into Ethan's old study. Serena noticed a pair of limited edition matching watches on the shelf. The sister-in-law mentioned they were a graduation gift, one of a kind. The moment Serena saw the male watch and the leather strap on the desk, the floodgates of her memory burst wide open. Images of that chaotic, bloody, and unforgettable night flashed through her mind. The next day, Serena stood in the prison visitation room. She faced her biological father, Arthur, who was trapped in an orange jumpsuit. Arthur tried to play the pity card, faking concern for her health. Serena's eyes remained ice cold, cutting off his pathetic performance. Arthur finally showed his true, greedy colors. He offered her 50% of his hidden shares if she got him out. Serena laughed in his face and flatly refused. She told him he wouldn't get a dime and would rot in prison for his sins. As Serena walked away, Arthur slammed his fists against the glass. He screamed and roared like a caged beast. Leaving her toxic father in his personal hell, Serena joined Ethan outside. Though justice was served, Serena still felt a heavy weight in her heart. Ethan comforted her gently, suggesting they try a new bistro nearby. But as they stepped down the concrete stairs, a shadowy figure watched them. It was Chloe, her eyes burning with pure, unhinged malice. "Die," Chloe shrieked, sprinting forward. She used all her strength to push Serena down the massive flight of stairs. In that split second, Ethan's instincts took over. He pulled Serena tightly into his chest, shielding her completely. His body took the brutal impact as they tumbled down the concrete steps. Ethan lay at the bottom, bruised and coughing up blood. Serena wept hysterically, holding his injured head in her lap. At the top of the stairs, Chloe looked down at the carnage. She let out a blood-curdling, psychotic laugh. Ladder, behind the glass of the prison visitor center. A completely defeated Chloe cried to her mother, Victoria. She wept that no one in the city would help them anymore. Victoria slammed the table in a feral rage, cursing Serena's name. Seeing her daughter's utter despair, Victoria's eyes turned dark. She pressed against the glass and whispered, "There is one man who can help us. Find him." Armed with her mother's secret contact, Chloe wiped her tears. A new, even more destructive fire of vengeance ignited in her eyes. Cut to the grand wedding rehearsal, under a canopy of white lights. The moment Serena stepped out in her bridal gown, Ethan froze completely. His sister-in-law teased him, telling him to put the custom necklace on his bride. Ethan stepped behind Serena, his eyes filled with pure devotion. "You are the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," he whispered. Serena blushed, the romantic tension between them practically electric. But the beautiful moment was shattered by an uninvited guest. Amber, her entitled stepsister, marched right into the boutique. The sister-in-law's expression hardened immediately upon seeing her, but the real shock came when Amber called the sister-in-law Big Sister. Ethan watched the exchange, a massive puzzle piece clicking into place. Turns out, the sister-in-law and Amber were half-sisters from a broken marriage. The sister-in-law only agreed to help Amber to secure her own mother's release. Meanwhile, Ethan's secretary texted him the final investigative report in the car. The ultimate truth was finally laid bare. The girl who saved him at the flower shop on September 5th was Serena all along. Amber saw Serena's stunning red reception dress and threw a tantrum. She demanded the boutique give the exact same dress to her. The sister-in-law tried to politely explain it was a custom size, but Ethan stepped forward, shielding his wife with a cold sneer. $50 million, Ethan said flatly to Amber. "Pay that, and out of respect for my sister-in-law, it's yours." Amber lost her mind, screaming that they were robbing her. But Ethan rattled off the proprietary material costs and assembly line shutdown fees. The actual value was $70 million, so 50 was a steal. Amber was left utterly speechless and fled the store in humiliation. Fuming in the courtyard, Amber received a phone call from Chloe. Chloe was still bitter about being discarded by Ethan. She stole a copy of Serena and Ethan's original marriage contract. She wanted to use it to destroy their wedding day entirely. The two toxic women met up, sharing a sinister, plotting smile. The wedding day arrived, looking like an absolute fairy tale. Serena walked down the aisle on Ethan's arm to thundering applause. She whispered her gratitude to him for arranging her grandmother's wheelchair access. Though it started as a contract, Ethan knew this was real happiness. When the officiant asked the golden question, they looked into each other's eyes. "I do," they answered simultaneously with absolute certainty. In the crowd, Amber glared at them, radiating pure hatred. Just as the priest was about to pronounce them husband and wife, the doors flew open. Derek burst into the chapel, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Stop this wedding! This entire marriage is a corporate fraud!" He yelled to the media. Derek claimed that exposing the contract would tank Logan Group's stock. He pointed mockingly at the giant projector screen, telling everyone to look. Serena panicked, but Ethan squeezed her hand, giving her total reassurance. The screen lit up and the entire congregation turned to look. But instead of a divorce contract, the screen displayed something else. It was titled, "The Ethan and Serena Ultimate Love Agreement." It stated Ethan must give Serena daily hugs, report his location, and never look at other women. The family and guests burst into roaring laughter at the sweet terms. They teased Ethan for being a completely whipped, doting husband. Serena blushed deeply, while Ethan smiled warmly at his wife. He proudly announced to the crowd that he would follow every single rule. Derek stood there frozen, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull. He couldn't understand how his blackmail material became a romance contract. Little did he know, Ethan was 3 steps ahead and swapped the files. Before Derek could even process his failure, massive security guards tackled him. They covered his mouth and dragged him out of the chapel like a rag doll. Derek kicked and screamed, but he was thrown out into the street. Amber trembled in her seat, her face completely pale with fear. The pathetic clowns were finally cleared out for good. Amidst the deafening cheers of their loved ones, Ethan cupped Serena's face. There were no more lies, no more misunderstandings, and no more obstacles. Underneath a sky full of stars, the 2 lovers pulled each other close, and they sealed their forever with a beautiful, passionate kiss. Can you believe the nerve of the man plotting in the next room? To climb the social ladder, he was forcing his daughter Amber to marry a corrupt tycoon. No matter how loud she screamed and begged, the mother only gave a cold laugh. "You don't have a choice today," she stated firmly. Cut to Victoria walking out of the detention center gates. She dusted off her clothes in disgust, complaining about the filthy cell. The moment Amber saw her mother, she burst into tears. She cried that her father was selling her off to a monster. Victoria flew into a rage, cursing the man for burning bridges. She grabbed her daughter, preparing to get into their car. Suddenly, a luxury sedan screeched to a halt right in front of them. The door opened, revealing Serena and Ethan stepping out in absolute power. Serena sneered at the 2 women. Out of jail so soon, Victoria. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Serena exposed their hypocrisy right there on the pavement. Arthur used Redwood's money to give you a lavish life, and you bit the hand that fed you. Amber tried to argue, but Serena stepped closer, piercing her with a glare. Every luxury car you drive was paid for by the sweat and blood of Redwood workers. Ethan chimed in, coldly mocking Victoria as a failed housewife. Victoria shook with rage, screaming obscenities at Serena. But Serena was no longer the defenseless girl they used to bully. She stepped directly into Victoria's personal space, delivering a final warning. "If I find even a fraction of a misstep, I will personally throw you back in a cell." Overwhelmed by the couple's sheer power, the villainous duo fled in their car. Ethan gently took Serena's hand. Feeling her tension melt away, Serena took a deep breath, looking up at the corporate headquarters. "Let's go inside," she said. "Let's see what else that old fox has planned." But before the final storm hit, the desperate mother and daughter lost all morals. Inside their penthouse, Victoria whispered her final scheme to Amber. She reminded her that the rival family still held massive capital in New York. Marry him, control him, and use their money to buy up Redwood's floating shares. "Once we take back control, we won't answer to anyone ever again." A sinister light flashed in Amber's eyes as she agreed to the dark pact. Days later, Serena and Ethan were inspecting one of their high-end restaurants. They happened to spot Amber on a date with the tycoon's son. Amber saw Serena walk in and instantly tripped a passing waiter on purpose. Scalding hot coffee drenched Amber and her date completely. Amber slammed the table, screaming at the waiter and demanding fires. Serena walked over, her voice ice cold. "I wondered who was causing a scene in my restaurant," she said. Amber snapped back, claiming they rented the place out for the day. But Serena shut her down instantly. "Redwood owns this property. I rule here." Ethan stepped in front of Serena, his presence suffocating the room. "We can pull the security footage right now to see who started this," he warned. Faced with Ethan's lethal gaze, the couple went silent. They grabbed their coats and left amidst the mockery of the patrons. But the villains moved faster than expected. Soon after, Victoria and Amber burst into the CEO's office with 32% of the shares. Victoria slammed her hand on Serena's desk, laughing hysterically. "As of today, Serena, this office belongs to me." Serena didn't even look up from her chair, calmly sipping her tea. Amber threw the legal acquisition documents onto the desk with a smirk. "Look closely, Serena. We hold 32% and you only have 30. Kneel down right now and crawl out of our building." Just as the villains celebrated their hollow victory, the doors were kicked open. Ethan entered with his legal team, his towering figure casting a shadow over the room. "Who is leaving today hasn't been decided yet," Ethan announced coldly. Meanwhile, the final loose end was being tied up in a private cell. Serena and Ethan stood before Arthur, who was bound in chains. Arthur had completely broken down. The atmosphere in the Sequoia Group's boardroom was dead silent. Victoria stormed in with her daughter Chloe and their accomplice Justin. She slammed her hands on the desk and smirked at the head seat. "I'm the majority shareholder now. This chairman's seat is mine." Sitting in the executive chair, Avery remained completely calm. She slowly took off her sunglasses and stared cold-eyed at the fools. Victoria thought she had won, but Avery's first words stripped away her pride. The stock manipulation and the leaked rumors of Arthur's arrest were all planned. The mastermind behind the hostile takeover was the foolish Victoria standing right here. Avery scoffed. "If I didn't play dumb, how could I lure you into my trap?" Justin was grinning earlier, but Avery warned him his investment would vanish today. Victoria tried to lecture Avery about business being full of deception. Tyler, who had been protecting Avery, spoke up with a deep voice. "The cards aren't all out yet. Why are you so sure Avery will lose?" Victoria snapped that Tyler had no right to speak at a Sequoia meeting, but Tyler threw down his personal trump card right in front of her. He personally held a 5% stake in the Sequoia Group. Combined with Avery's shares, they had a 35% controlling interest. The tables turned instantly, and Avery stood up with absolute power. "The ones who need to get out of Sequoia are you guys." But this was just the beginning, and a fatal blow was coming next. Avery wasn't just here for the company. She wanted justice for her mother. Tyler had secretly investigated the medical staff from years ago. He found out the truth about the passing of Avery's mother. Her mother didn't die from overwork. She was poisoned by Victoria's money. Victoria bribed a nurse at City Hospital during Sequoia's darkest days. The nurse administered lethal drugs over time, causing total organ failure. Holding back her grief, Avery slammed down ironclad proof on the desk. It was a recorded confession from the nurse who fled overseas. The audio clearly played all the details of Victoria hiring the killer. Seeing her murder exposed, Victoria went mad and smashed the recorder. Avery stared at her coldly. "Go ahead. I have countless backups of this." At Tyler's command, security guards in black suits rushed into the room. Tyler held Avery close and looked down at Victoria with disdain. "You are suspected of murder and illegal takeover. Tell it to the police." The guards moved quickly, grabbing the screaming and struggling Victoria. Justin was terrified, his face pale as he raised his hands to Tyler. "This has nothing to do with me," he yelled out in panic. A guard kicked him down and dragged him out like a dead dog. Chloe was also pinned and taken away right out of the office. With the villains arrested, the boardroom finally fell quiet again. Avery looked through the files and stared emotionally at her man. Tyler had done so much for Sequoia, buying shares secretly years ago. They cleared up all their misunderstandings and held each other by the window. They took back the company and found their perfect true love. Chloe never thought her final desperate move would fail so completely. Not long ago, she stood on the roof of an abandoned building downtown. With a twisted face, she called Avery to make a final deadly extortion. She demanded $100 million in cash within 1 hour. If Avery didn't show up alone, her grandmother's life would be over. Avery was crying in panic on her way to the location. Meanwhile, Tyler rushed out despite the unhealed injury on his hand. He was anxious after hearing Grandma was taken, and Avery was in danger. Tyler called his sister-in-law Sarah to ask about Chloe's location. Sarah pretended to know nothing and hung up with a snake-like smile. "Tyler, you will soon feel the pain of losing your love," she muttered. On the rooftop, Chloe waved a sharp knife against Avery's neck. She screamed that they would die together to avenge her mother. Suddenly, the heavy doors were kicked open with a loud bang. Tyler arrived like a savior with a large group of bodyguards. Seeing Tyler appear, Chloe completely lost her composure and panicked for Grandma's safety. Avery showed no fear against the blade. She stayed calm and started playing along with Chloe's demands. "Put the knife down, and I'll give you money or Sequoia," Avery said. To distract the desperate woman, Avery stepped forward to trade places. "Take me as your hostage instead of Grandma," Avery offered. Chloe foolishly thought the heiress was worth more to the families. She believed Sequoia and the Vance family would pay the money easily. She took the bait greedily, but everything happened in a split second. As they were switching hostages, Tyler's guards pounced like tigers. They pinned Chloe to the ground before she could even move. Her accomplice hiding behind the pipes called their boss in despair. The plan has completely failed, the accomplice reported over the phone. Tyler rushed forward and held the shaken Avery tightly in his arms. His assistant arrived with the best news. Grandma was safe and sound. Staring at the defeated but still stubborn Chloe, Tyler's eyes were ice cold. He ripped away her final cover in front of everyone. Your illegal takeover failed and you tried to save Victoria, Tyler said. You even lost your mind and kidnapped an old woman for it. Tyler grabbed her chin tightly and demanded in a freezing voice, "Who are you working for? Who made this deal with you?" The scene flashed back and the ultimate truth finally came to light. The mastermind behind the extortion and the plot against Avery was Sarah. She was the one who always played the sweet sister-in-law to Tyler. In a secret room, Sarah looked down at Chloe and gave the orders. She used Chloe's hatred and desperation to save her mother for this trap. Sarah said coldly, "You get the money and I'll take her life." However, the main team had far more cards than these fools imagined. In a cozy villa in the woods, Tyler handed tea to a tired Avery. They found out the Lawson family was planning an engagement with Chloe. They were trying to buy back Sequoia stock at a high price. The assistant also delivered a top-secret old file on Sequoia last night. Tyler opened the thick red envelope and looked at the medical report. His face turned incredibly grave as he read the document carefully. He took a deep breath and looked at Avery beside him. "Avery, you need to be prepared for the harsh truth," Tyler said. "The doctor's personal report states your mother's death wasn't an accident. Victoria was indeed the one who poisoned her at the office." The blood feud was confirmed, but they had already played a trap. Earlier, Tyler fell into a deep coma due to a severe drug allergy. The situation at the Vance Group became extremely critical for a while. Several corrupted directors openly challenged Avery in the hospital hallway. They boldly suggested that Sarah should take over as acting chairperson. Hiding in the dark, Sarah thought she was playing it perfectly. She pretended to decline the offer while celebrating in her heart. But smart Avery had already seen right through her fake innocence. Instead of fighting back directly, Avery smiled coldly and went along. "I agree to let Sarah take over as chairperson," Avery announced loudly. She sent the jumping directors away with a single sentence. With power in her hands, Sarah's fake smile turned into pure greed. But she didn't know Avery had already set a trap with Tyler. Tyler had already woken up and planned everything from his bed. Inside the luxury mansion, Christian and Victoria were celebrating with Sarah. They raised their glasses together, thinking they had already won. Christian sat back, smoking a cigar, and mocked Tyler openly. "Tyler is just a useless playboy. Taking the company is easy," he sneered. The old fox laughed and the wolves plotted, completely in the dark. They didn't know the truth about the murder was already exposed. Chloe was arrested on the roof and the bell was tolling for them. The final strike for revenge would send these monsters to hell. Sarah never imagined her perfect play would make her the main target. Avery broke into the room with a group of high society guests. They caught Sarah and Nicholas together in a complete mess. Faced with flashing cameras and sharp questions, Sarah panicked completely. She tried to block the lenses, making weak and useless excuses. An elegant lady shook with rage and pointed right at Sarah's face. "You are the chairman's wife, acting like this while your husband is sick." Nicholas was caught red-handed, and the lady called off their engagement. Seeing Sarah utterly humiliated, Avery stood aside with a calm smile. "I am just giving you a taste of your own medicine," Avery said. To save face, Sarah forced herself to stay calm before the guards. She talked to the cameras about her years of good reputation. She claimed tonight was a setup and she would investigate it fully. Once the crowd was chased away, Sarah threw off her mask in rage. She pointed at Avery, screaming that she was framed by her. Avery wasn't afraid at all and smiled coldly at her sister-in-law. "Weren't you the one who tried to ruin my reputation first?" Avery asked. However, another storm was rising while Tyler was still resting. A woman named Elena suddenly burst into the hospital room crying. She threw herself by Tyler's bed, tears streaming down her face. "I was only gone for months. How did you end up like this?" Elena sobbed. Sarah scoffed, mocking Elena for coming just to claim the inheritance. But Elena dropped a massive bombshell right in front of them. "I am pregnant, and it is Tyler's child," Elena revealed to the room. She grabbed Avery's hand, crying about why she left before. "I heard your marriage was fake, but the baby is innocent," Elena wept. Faced with this sudden news, Avery's face turned completely cold. Sarah had her own plans and offered to take Elena for a checkup. "I'll take her back to the family estate later," Sarah said quickly. But Sarah's own days of comfort were coming to an end. Back at the family estate, a middle-aged man slapped Sarah hard. "You let a young girl play you like a fool," the man roared in anger. With a twisted face, he choked Sarah tightly against the wall. "You've been married into this family for 10 years, he shouted, "and you still don't hold the Vance family assets in your hands." Sarah could barely breathe and begged her father for mercy. "Give me one more chance, father," she cried out in pain. In the quiet room, Avery sat by the bed peeling an apple, looking at the sleeping Tyler. She talked to herself with a smirk. "If you don't wake up, we can start a poker game here." The next second, Tyler actually opened his eyes and looked at her. He grabbed Avery's hand and began to explain everything softly. He never admitted his feelings because of a misunderstanding before. He thought Elena was the one with him at the flower shop that night. He also found out Sarah was plotting against them in the dark. To keep Avery safe, he chose to hide his true heart from her. Hearing his honest confession, Avery's cold heart finally melted down. Tyler looked at her deeply, begging for her forgiveness right now. "Be my lawful wife and I'll give you the grandest wedding," he promised. Under his gentle gaze, Avery nodded with tears and kissed him deeply. Sarah still had no idea that Tyler was already awake. She found Avery and continued to threaten her with arrogance. "I don't need to ruin your name to kick you out," Sarah sneered. With Tyler out, she believed she ruled the Vance family now. Avery calmly took out her phone and showed her an agreement. Her words were quiet but cut straight to Sarah's heart. "Tyler planned ahead and we signed a proxy agreement," Avery said. "As his wife, I have full authority over all his assets now." Sarah stared at the document, her face turning whiter than paper. But Avery wasn't done yet and showed her a video next. It was the recording of Sarah and Nicholas together in that room. "If my brother wakes up and sees this, what will he think?" Avery asked. Seeing the evidence, Sarah lost all her courage and panicked. She begged Avery to delete the file immediately from her phone, but Avery was in total control now and smiled gently at her. "We should discuss if you are fit to be the acting chairperson," Avery said. She had already invited all the other directors over to the room. Faced with Avery's confident eyes, Sarah collapsed into her chair. Sarah walked into the old Vance estate with a pregnant Elena. She tried to please the grandmother with a proud smile. "I took Elena for a checkup. She will stay here for the baby," Sarah said. But grandmother sitting there wasn't someone easy to fool. She slammed her teacup down and questioned Elena with a cold face. "What status do you have to stay in this house?" Grandma snapped. "We don't even know if this child belongs to Tyler yet." Seeing the old lady refuse the trap, Sarah turned hostile immediately. She used the fact that Tyler and his brother were sick to threaten her. "This child is the only future heir of the Vance family now," Sarah yelled. She demanded Avery step down and sign the divorce papers immediately. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from outside the main hall. Tyler, who was supposed to be unconscious, appeared on the stairs. He was wearing a sharp black suit and holding a file folder. He walked down steadily, the pressure dropping with every single step. He stared coldly at Sarah and asked a piercing question. "Are you really doing all this for me and the family, Sarah?" Seeing her grandson safe, Grandma hugged him with tears of joy. Tyler patted her comfortingly and threw the heavy folder on the table. Elena and Victoria panicked instantly as Tyler exposed the truth. The folder contained all of Elena's travel and police records from abroad. The assault she suffered overseas was fully documented in the file. The story about carrying a Vance heir was a total lie. Elena screamed that it was fake as her secret was uncovered. Seeing her plan fail, Sarah turned on Elena to save herself. "I was fooled by this wicked woman too," Sarah shouted out. In fact, everything was already controlled by Tyler and Avery. The two brothers had set a large trap from their hospital beds. Tyler also uncovered a deeper secret of the wealthy family. He told Avery about the truth behind his brother's car accident. His brother didn't become paralyzed by a simple accident years ago. He was held and drugged by the hitmen hired by the Lawson family. They wanted total control and tried to kill both brothers together. Fortunately, the assistant arrived in time and knocked the assassin down. The story reached its final judgment at the late chairman's memorial. The head of the Lawson family, Christian, tried to force Tyler out. He mocked Tyler for being a playboy with no supporters left. But Tyler and Avery walked in hand with a cold smile. They threw down the final fatal evidence right before his eyes. 20 years ago, Christian ordered the attack to buy Sequoia cheaply. He was the one who caused the death of Avery's mother. The wicked stepmother and her father were just his small pawns. Christian's face turned pale, completely speechless under the gaze. The next second, plainclothes police rushed out from the crowd. They announced Christian was under arrest for murder and corporate theft. They forced the old businessman into the police car immediately. Christians screamed and cursed at Sarah as he was led away. The strict judgment of the law was waiting for him now. The revenge was served and the dark clouds finally cleared up. The Vance family survived the crisis and came together again. Avery leaned gently into Tyler's arms with a sweet smile. "We made it, Tyler," she whispered softly against his chest. Tyler held his wife tightly, about to say something back to her. Suddenly, Avery covered her mouth, feeling a wave of nausea. Sarah's eyes lit up beside them as she gasped in surprise. "Avery, are you pregnant?" she asked with excitement. Tyler froze for a moment, then laughed out with pure joy. He lifted his wife into the air, holding her tightly. Their happy life was just beginning after all the storms. In a high-end club flashing with neon lights in New York, nobody expected a thing from Aiden, the lowly busboy getting ordered around by his manager. But he held a secret identity that could make the entire world tremble. The moment Aiden pushed open the VIP lounge door, a shocking scene unfolded. A group of terrifying, black-clad elites instantly dropped to their knees before him. They shouted in unison, their voices echoing like thunder, "All hail the war sovereign." Turns out, he was the legendary, all-powerful war sovereign himself. The leader respectfully delivered the Grand Emperor's decree. He announced that the princess had come of age, and they wished to give her hand to him. But Aiden didn't give a damn and coldly rejected the proposal. His heart had been completely filled by a girl who saved his life years ago. He only chose to stay in the mundane world as a busboy to find her in the crowd. However, the gears of fate turned ruthlessly in the corridor. Serena, the billionaire heiress of the Vance family, strutted past Aiden. She wore a dazzling golden sequin mini dress, radiating pure arrogance driven by her usual entitlement. Serena suddenly called out to Aiden, faced with Aiden's polite response. The proud heiress felt deeply insulted. She sharply demanded to know how a nobody dared look her in the eye. She even viciously threatened to gouge out his regular peasant eyes. Facing her overbearing threat, the war sovereign merely gave a contemptuous smile. He fired back, saying he wouldn't take a girl like her even if she were free. Those words instantly set Serena's temper on fire. She pinned Aiden against the wall, grabbing his booty with pure fury. She snarled through her teeth, promising to ruin him before the night was over. But Aiden's gaze remained colder than an absolute ice sheet. He grabbed her hand and warned her, "Plenty of people want a piece of me. Who do you think you are? Don't mess with me. I am a demon you can't afford to provoke." Their encounter ended in pure hatred. But the moment Serena reached the club entrance, real trouble caught up with her. The local gang boss, Python, cornered her with a squad of heavy muscle. He mocked that the Vance family was going under, while putting his hands all over her. He tried to drag Serena back into a private room by force. In utter desperation, Serena spotted Aiden walking out behind her. She immediately grabbed Aiden's arm, lying out loud to the gang. She announced to everyone that this busboy was her boyfriend. The gang boss felt insulted to his core and ordered his men to take him out, but they had absolutely no idea what kind of monster they just provoked. Forced to defend himself, Aiden unleashed his wrath like a hungry tiger. In seconds, he snapped their bones, leaving the guards groaning on the floor. Aiden stared down the gang boss, his voice dead calm. "I haven't killed anyone in a long time," he warned. "Don't tempt me." The terrified boss lost his mind, bowing frantically and begging for his life. He scrambled onto all fours and ran away into the night. After the chaos settled, Serena grew intensely curious about this lethal busboy. Sitting in her blue BMW convertible, she used reverse psychology on him. She invited Aiden back to her penthouse for a couple of drinks. Aiden wanted to see what kind of game she was playing, so he agreed. But Aiden didn't know that the Vance family was on the brink of total bankruptcy. Serena's parents were forcing her to marry a corrupt, degenerate heir tomorrow. Left with no way to fight her family, Serena fell into complete despair. She had kept herself pure her whole life, but now decided on an extreme rebellion. She slipped a potent drug into the red wine, choosing to give her first time to a nobody. She preferred a random busboy over the monster her parents picked out. When Serena served the wine, Aiden drained his glass without a second thought, but the moment he set it down, his eyes locked onto something shocking. As Serena poured the wine, he saw a crescent-shaped scar on her wrist. Aiden's heart pounded wildly as a realization hit his mind. "Serena," he cried out in his head, "I finally found you." But before he could say a word, the drug hit his bloodstream like a freight train. Lost in a haze of sudden heat, Serena wrapped her arms around his neck. She leaned in and pressed her lips against his in a passionate kiss. Driven by the drug, the two spent a wild, intimate night together in her bed. The next morning, Aiden watched Serena sleeping peacefully beside him. He gently ran his fingers over the crescent scar on her wrist. He made a silent vow to protect his savior for the rest of his life. But when Serena woke up and realized her naked reality, she lost control. Shame and anger took over, and she screamed at him to get out. Aiden tried to stay and help, but Serena sneered at him with deep disgust. "You are just a broke club busboy," she mocked bitterly. "How dare you think you can help the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation?" Aiden didn't argue, simply leaving his number on the counter before walking out. The moment he stepped out of the building, he changed into a sharp suit. His eyes reverted to the lethal cold gaze of the war sovereign. He dialed his men, ordering a full investigation into the Vance family. Back in the penthouse, Serena held a photo of the war sovereign, sobbing heavily. She wept because she swore she would only ever marry the sovereign. She felt her purity had just been ruined by a random kitchen worker. She had absolutely no idea that her dream man was the guy she just kicked out. Serena's mind drifted completely back to a sunny afternoon many years ago. A young Aiden and his father were being brutally bullied by the governor's son. His father was covered in blood, and young Aiden lay helpless on the pavement. Just when all hope was lost, a young Serena appeared like a guardian angel. She bravely stepped up, screaming at the bullies until they backed off. She knelt down beside young Aiden, gently wiping the blood from his face. From that exact moment, the little boy with the blood-stained handkerchief swore an oath. He promised himself he would conquer the world, marry her, and keep her safe forever. Now that little boy had returned as the supreme, all-powerful war sovereign. He brought limitless wealth and absolute power back to the city, and their true story was just getting started. The story officially opens on the towering Vance Group headquarters at night. Serena, the beautiful heiress, walked into the lobby with an emotionless face. But before she could exit, her parents snapped at her from the lounge sofa. Her father, Arthur, slammed his fist down, ordering her to stay right there. He demanded she wait because the wealthy heir Charles was arriving. The mere mention of Charles made Serena's stomach turn with disgust. She turned around, her voice shaking with anger as she confronted them. "Charles is a degenerate who spends every night in clubs," she yelled. "His reputation is completely ruined. Why are you forcing me to marry garbage?" Arthur and his wife snapped back, screaming over her voice. They reminded her that Charles's father was just promoted to commerce chairman. His uncle was a decorated war hero who just became a general. Meanwhile, Vance Group was drowning in debt and facing complete bankruptcy. Her older brother was even locked up overseas, facing years in a federal prison. The wealthy family was the only lifeline left for the Vance estate. Arthur pointed a finger at her face, roaring in a pure rage. "Does your petty pride matter more than the survival of our entire family?" Before the echoes of his shout died down, Charles walked in, looking smug. He brought a small army of bodyguards carrying expensive betrothal gifts. The moment he stepped through the door, he showed his greasy impatience. He sat on the sofa, speaking in a condescending, arrogant tone. "I heard Serena has never even held hands with a guy before," he smirked. "That means I'm going to be her very first man." Serena let out a cold, sharp laugh from across the room. "Don't flatter yourself," she stated with absolute calm. "Last night I already slept with a club busboy." The entire lobby went dead silent, the air freezing instantly. Charles's face twisted into an ugly, furious grimace as he stood up. He demanded the parents tell him what the hell was going on. Arthur and his wife went pale, desperately offering fake smiles to calm him down. They lied, saying Serena had sworn to only marry the sovereign. They claimed she was just making up stories to get out of the engagement. But Serena refused to let them off the hook, doubling down on the truth. "I did it precisely because I didn't want to marry you," she spat, "and he only left this morning." Faced with her parents' furious demands, hands for proof. Serena gave a cold smile. She turned around and led the entire group straight into her bedroom. Before anyone could speak, she ripped the duvet off the mattress. Right in the center of the pristine white sheet lay a stark, crimson bloodstain. The proof was undeniable. Charles felt his fragile ego get dragged through the dirt in front of everyone. He pointed at the bed, his entire body shaking with pure humiliation. Arthur felt his family honor disintegrate, screaming at his daughter. "You disgrace!" He roared, demanding to know how she could fall so low. But Serena stood her ground without a single trace of fear. "My body belongs to me, and who I give it to is my choice," she countered. Arthur went hysterical. "You are a Vance. You exist only for this family." Charles realized he would be the laughingstock of all New York high society. "I don't take hand-me-downs," he hissed, turning on his heel. He slammed the door, leaving the parents wailing in despair in the living room. The moment Charles left, Arthur's phone rang with a terrifying call. The true patriarch, Old Man Vance, ordered them to bring Serena in for a family trial. Arthur took his blind rage out on his daughter, dragging her out of bed. He forced her into a car, hauling her off to face the family council. But what none of them knew was that across the city, a secret meeting was happening. Inside a hidden, heavily guarded estate, a lethal woman stood at attention. She wore tight black leather and high combat boots, kneeling before a man. The man stood with his back turned, looking out the massive window in a sharp suit. She respectfully addressed him as the war sovereign. The agent reported that the Vance family's son was locked up in a maximum security prison. She added that a mysterious corporate alliance was forcing the family into bankruptcy. To save themselves, the elders were planning to force Serena into the marriage today. Hearing this, the war sovereign slowly turned around, his eyes flashing with lethal intent. He immediately issued a supreme, classified command to his forces: summon the 9 gods of war, deploy 3,000 vanguard troops to New York. Then he dropped a sentence that chilled the room: "Anyone who dares touch what is mine will pay with their life." Meanwhile, inside the Vance Group headquarters, the trial was underway. Old Man Vance slammed his cane against the floor, cursing Serena for ruining their name. Serena's cousin, Tiffany, and her uncle, Richard, jumped at the chance to destroy her. Tiffany sat on the designer couch, pouring pure venom into her words. She mocked Serena for being selfish, accusing her of abandoning her brother and family. She even insulted Serena's appearance, calling her cheap for sleeping around. Serena's eyes went ice cold as she warned her cousin to shut her mouth. But Tiffany only grew louder, screaming that Serena was a criminal to the family. Richard seized the moment, whispering into the old patriarch's ear. He proposed stripping Serena of her CEO title immediately and giving it to Tiffany. The old man nodded in agreement without a second thought. Just when Richard's family thought they had won everything, Charles returned. He marched right into the boardroom, and the elders groveled like stray dogs. Charles stared down at Serena, who was trapped in the interrogation chair. "I know you are damaged goods now, but I can overlook it," he sneered. "You sleep with me today, or I will have my men tear that busboy to pieces." Serena gritted her teeth, spitting back, "In your dreams." But the heartless grandfather cared only about securing the alliance. He turned to the private security force and gave a savage command: "Guards, drag this disobedient girl into the back lounge. Let her serve Charles right now and seal the marriage." The guards moved in with sick grins, grabbing Serena by her arms. Serena fought with everything she had, screaming in absolute horror. As the lounge doors began to close, she faced total, inescapable ruin. But at that exact split second, the main entrance exploded inward. A tall, striking man in a custom suit strode into the room like a hurricane. His eyes cut through the crowd like razor-sharp steel. He radiated a suffocating, terrifying pressure that froze everyone in place. "Let's see who dares touch her." His voice boomed like thunder. The entire boardroom fell under a paralyzed, fearful silence. Old Man Vance shook with anger, demanding to know who dared interrupt. "Someone who can protect her," Aiden replied, his voice deadly calm. He walked past the guards straight to the tear-stained Serena. His fierce expression melted into pure, deep tenderness. "You slept with me, which makes you my woman," he said softly. "You are in trouble, so how could I not show up?" Hearing those words, a bomb went off in the villains' heads. The man who just breached diminished their security and paralyzed their council, was the exact same worthless busboy they had been mocking all day. The war sovereign turned back to Serena, telling her not to worry about a thing. Once Tiffany and Richard recovered from the shock, they started screaming again. They laughed at a kitchen worker trying to act like a hero in a billionaire's office. Aiden let out a cold laugh, his razor gaze locking onto Tiffany. "You spend your life bouncing between VIP nightclubs with any man who pays," he mused. "What right does a piece of trash like you have to speak to me?" Hit right where it hurt, Tiffany went hysterical, begging her grandfather to kill him. Charles was consumed by a toxic, jealous rage, seeing his prize taken away. His face twisted as he pointed a finger at the sovereign. "A broke busboy wants to play hero. You are asking for death," he screamed. He turned to his personal elite bodyguard, a lethal assassin known as the Hawk. "Hawk, break this garbage's legs and throw him to the dogs," Charles ordered. The assassin stepped forward, a thick wave of killing intent rolling off him. Every villain in the room smiled, waiting for a brutal execution. Tiffany cheered from the sidelines, expecting a bloodbath. But then, a bizarre, shocking twist happened. Without any warning, Charles suddenly spun around on his heel. He swung his arm back and delivered a massive, earth-shattering slap. The hit connected right across Tiffany's smug, gloating face. The force was so brutal it sent her crashing to the floor, screaming in agony. The entire boardroom instantly froze, paralyzed in absolute shock. The tension in the grand hall was thick enough to cut with a knife. The old patriarch frantically ordered the guards to beat Aiden to a pulp. Serena immediately threw her arms wide, shielding Aiden with her own body. She begged her grandfather to stop, telling Aiden this had nothing to do with him. But Aiden remained completely unfazed, gently patting her shoulder. "I am actually pretty good in a fight," he smiled. "Let me teach them a lesson." Serena panicked, warning him that these people controlled the city's underworld. Aiden merely chuckled. "If they want to die, I'll happily play along." Seeing Aiden acting cocky in the face of death, Charles lost his patience. "Hawk, kill him now," he roared to his elite guard. The assassin lunged forward, but Aiden's movement was a blur. A single devastating kick sent the martial artist flying across the room, coughing up blood. Aiden stepped over the groaning body, staring down at Charles with pure dominance. Charles trembled, but still tried to threaten him with his family's vast wealth. The old patriarch joined in, screaming that the entire New York syndicate would hunt him. Aiden didn't waste words, slamming his boot onto Charles's chest, making him spit blood. The scene shifted slightly, revealing the hidden catalyst of the family crisis. Before this meeting, a ruthless mob boss named Tony had breached the Vance estate. He demanded $100 million to clear a predatory loan. The patriarch argued that the original debt was only $50 million. The mob boss laughed, stating that street interest doubled every week. He even openly harassed Serena right in front of her family. The old man tried to use Charles's name to scare the mafia off, but Tony didn't give a damn about the wealthy family and kept insulting them. Back to the present, Aiden stood between Serena and the chaos. "I can have $50 million delivered in 5 minutes, Aiden stated clearly. "But if you demand 100, you won't get a single dime." Tony felt mocked, ordering his remaining thugs to gut the boy. But before the thugs could even reach him, Aiden systematically dismantled them. Seeing his muscle drop, Tony panicked and pulled a snub-nosed revolver. He pressed the cold steel barrel right against Aiden's forehead. Faced with a gun to his head, Aiden's expression didn't even flicker. With blinding speed, he stripped the weapon from the mob boss's hand. He flipped the gun around and fired a round straight into Tony's knee. The mob boss collapsed onto the floor, screaming in agony and begging for mercy. The old patriarch almost had a heart attack from the sheer violence. He dialed the local police precinct commander, Captain Harris. He lied into the receiver, screaming that a terrorist was murdering his guests. Charles lay groaning in a pool of blood as the elders called for an ambulance. Instead of showing gratitude, Serena's mother started screeching at Aiden. She mocked him for being a penniless club worker who dared dream of her daughter. Aiden ignored her. "Let Serena stay with me, and I'll wipe out your debts," Arthur scoffed, believing the busboy had completely lost his mind. Just then, Captain Harris stormed the building with a heavily armed SWAT unit. The bleeding mob boss screamed for backup the moment he saw the uniform. The captain, clearly on the mob's payroll, didn't bother asking questions. He ordered his men to surround Aiden with automatic rifles. "Shoot to kill if he moves a muscle," the captain yelled. Serena tried to explain the situation, but her voice was completely ignored. Aiden calmly exposed the captain's corruption before allowing them to handcuff him. Inside the precinct interrogation room, Captain Harris looked smug. He told Aiden that his life was officially over in this city. Aiden sat relaxed in the steel chair, giving the captain a cold smile. "You just destroyed your entire career today," Aiden said softly. He told the captain to check his front coat pocket. An officer pulled out a solid gold medallion and handed it over. The captain laughed, assuming it was a cheap replica bought online. Aiden remained calm. "Take that to the commissioner upstairs. It might save your life." The officer raised his fist to strike, but the captain hesitated. Something about Aiden's absolute calm made him walk upstairs to check. They had absolutely no idea that the man sitting in their cells held a supreme authority that could level the entire city of New York. Upstairs, Police Commissioner Vance was casually scrolling through his phone. Suddenly, a panicked captain burst into the office, presenting the gold token. The commissioner looked annoyed until his eyes locked onto the engraving. The words "War Sovereign" were etched into the solid gold metal. The commissioner's phone shattered on the floor as his entire body shook. Learning that his men had locked up the Supreme Commander, he went feral. He delivered a brutal slap to the captain's face, roaring at the top of his lungs. "You didn't arrest a suspect. You caged the supreme ruler of the military." Meanwhile, inside a penthouse suite across town, a different war was brewing. A wealthy elite named Julian sat on a leather sofa, showing off before Serena. He ordered the most expensive menu items while taking shots at Aiden. He sneered that any man who let a woman pay for dinner was a parasite. Aiden leaned back on the lounge chair, letting out a sharp laugh. "Don't think a little pocket change makes you a god," Aiden countered. Julian slammed his fist down, pointing a finger directly at Aiden's face. "You are a kitchen worker. How dare you speak to a martial arts champion?" Aiden didn't even blink. "I am checking you right now. What are you going to do?" Serena panicked, pulling Aiden aside and begging him to stop. She explained that Julian was their only connection to Lord Frank, the Underground King. Julian grew bolder, pinning Aiden against the wall with a nasty grin. He promised Aiden would leave the venue in a body bag tonight. He bragged about his father's elite boxing gyms and political connections. "The Underground King arrives in 5 minutes," Julian hissed. "If you don't bow down, I will personally crush your skull." Right as he finished speaking, the heavy oak doors were kicked open. Lord Frank, the absolute ruler of the New York Syndicate, entered with 50 soldiers. Julian immediately put on a pathetic, groveling smile and rushed over. He pointed at Aiden, lying that a broke worker was causing a riot on his property. Lord Frank looked toward the corner of the room where Julian was pointing. The moment his eyes locked onto Aiden's freezing stare, his blood ran cold, his knees buckled, and he nearly fell face first onto the expensive carpet. Julian, completely oblivious, kept urging the mob boss to execute the boy. The mob boss turned around, his terror instantly transforming into pure fury. With all his might, he delivered a devastating backhand to Julian's face. The strike sent the champion spinning through the air, crashing into a table. Serena stood frozen in the center of the room, her mind going blank. Before Julian could even understand what happened, the final blow fell. The man who ruled the entire city's underworld dropped to his knees. He crawled across the floor like a dog, begging for mercy at Aiden's feet. "Supreme Sovereign, I didn't know you were here. Please spare my life." The entire VIP lounge descended into a dead, terrified silence. Julian and Serena sat paralyzed on the floor, their minds entirely broken. They could not comprehend how a lowly club worker held the underworld in his palm. Aiden looked down at the shaking mob boss with absolute indifference. He tapped Julian's terrified, bleeding face with a cold smile. "You were pretty loud a second ago," Aiden mocked. "Where'd that energy go?" Julian wept, slapping his own face, while Lord Frank offered his own hands as penance. In the presence of absolute power, the elite champion was nothing but dust. Looking at Aiden's terrifying, majestic silhouette, Serena's world shattered. She finally realized what kind of god she had pushed out of her life. Before Serena could catch her breath, her phone rang with an emergency. The news from the receiver made her turn completely pale. "I am coming back right now," she gasped, her hands shaking. Aiden frowned with deep concern. "What happened?" Serena panicked, tears streaming down her face as she blamed herself. "Because you beat up Charles, his father has unleashed an all-out war. The Commerce Alliance has shut down every single Vance business in the city." Aiden's eyes turned into pools of pure, lethal darkness. "The old man wants to die," he muttered. "Let's go, no one touches you." The moment they reached the family manor, Arthur's screaming hit them. He pointed a shaking finger at Aiden, losing his mind with rage. "This is your fault. You ruined our family," he shrieked at Serena. "The Alliance has blocked our shipping lines and frozen our bank accounts." He ordered Aiden to get the hell out of his house forever. Facing the furious father, Aiden remained completely calm and dominant. "If you want me to save your company, you better watch your tone," he warned. To the desperate father, the busboy's words sounded like insanity, triggering bitter laughter. Right as Arthur was screaming insults, a voice echoed from the courtyard. "The Director of Commerce has arrived." Director Logan stepped into the hall, looking immensely powerful. Charles's father, the chairman, rushed over like he just found his savior. He demanded Serena's blood for what happened to his son. The director put on a stern face, ready to crush the Vance family for a favor. Aiden didn't even bother standing up from the designer sofa. "Director Logan," he said, his voice cutting through the room like ice. "Do you really think you can ignore my commands?" The director turned around, and the moment he saw Aiden's face, his heart stopped. His arrogant expression shattered into pure, terrifying panic. He dropped straight to his knees on the marble floor, sweat pouring down his face. He bowed his head to the ground, his voice trembling violently. "I didn't know you were in the city, Lord Aiden. Please forgive my ignorance." Arthur and the chairman stood there, completely petrified into stone statues. Aiden pointed a finger at the trembling chairman on the floor. "This man has abused his office, extorted businesses, and corrupted the market. Director, how do we handle a parasite like this?" Aiden asked coldly. The chairman tried to fight back, screaming that his brother was a military general. Aiden didn't care. "You have exactly 3 seconds." Under the suffocating weight of the sovereign's presence, the director broke. "As of right now, you are stripped of your title and assets," he roared at the chairman. "The entire alliance is under federal audit, and internal affairs will arrest you tonight." With one sentence, the powerful chairman collapsed onto the floor, ruined. Outside, a series of brutal cracks echoed through the courtyard. Every guard who had raised a hand against Aiden had their limbs systematically broken. They were dragged out of the estate like dead weight, leaving a trail of blood. Aiden's freezing gaze finally landed on Arthur, who was hiding under a table. Aiden looked down at him with utter disgust. "If it weren't for Serena, you wouldn't survive the night," he whispered. "Using your own daughter as a transaction has sealed your fate." The storm finally passed, leaving a quiet serenity behind. Under the golden afternoon sun, Aiden and Serena walked along a park path. Serena crossed her arms, looking away with a deep blush on her cheeks. She softly explained that her confession about sleeping with a busboy was a lie. She claimed she only said it to ruin the engagement and hurt her parents. Aiden smirked, stepping closer until his chest almost touched her shoulder. "Oh? So you don't think I am handsome, or maybe you like me just a little?" Serena's face turned bright crimson as she gave him an annoyed look. "Stop being so full of yourself," she huffed, looking toward the horizon. "I am the CEO of Vance Group. I don't fall for regular service workers." Her eyes filled with a pure, dreamy adoration as she continued. "The man I love is a god who stands above the entire world like a myth. He is a true hero. Compared to him, you are on the ground, and he is in the heavens." Aiden had to fight down a massive laugh at her pure innocence. "All right, tell me then," he smiled warmly. "Who is this great hero of yours?" Serena lifted her chin with intense pride. "The war sovereign." Hearing his woman confess her love to him